Good evening, friends. Welcome to the live coaching classes. As you know, today's topic is exemptions from GST. And as we have already met before in the first session, wherein we have discussed the basic fundamentals to be kept in mind while preparing for this paper, as this indirect taxes has been introduced for the first time at intermediate level. So I have already briefed you the nutshells of this paper and what is the examination pattern and everything. So although I will try to cover some basic few queries pertaining to this topic, exemptions from GST, like some general questions which generally arise in students' mind. One of the common asked question is how to solve computational problems. As this topic, exemptions from GST generally involves basically computation of liability, like what is the how much determination of liability to pay tax. So I will try to answer the question pertaining to how to solve computational problem, because in examination what we generally see, there is never a set pattern, and a selective study is never recommended for the chartered accountancy students. But yes, for this paper, this subject topic generally, exemptions from GST, generally a computational based question is asked, or wherein you are asked to determine whether a particular service is exempted or not, is whether it is liable, whether we are liable to pay tax in this case or not. If you remember, in the first class, I have discussed with you the basically the study guidelines. And what do we mean by study guidelines is that the topics which have been excluded from syllabus, though it might happen that those topics are discussed in the study material for the sake of understanding. But whatever is discussed for the sake of understanding, that doesn't mean that this is important for you from examination point of view. This is only for the sake of general knowledge and understanding, because exemptions for supply of goods is outside the purview of syllabus at intermediate level, and we only discuss the exemption for supply of these services in an enumerative manner at this level. Although few examples have been given in the study material, and these are only for the sake of understanding. So this session, let's start with it. Exemptions from GST. As I told you in the first session, that I will try to cover as many general queries which we receive from students over different platforms, like over emails, over telephone, and over eSahayata portal. And one of the most frequently asked queries pertaining to computational problems. Like generally students ask us, like, is marking of the computational problem stepwise? So my answer is yes. The marking of the computational problems are always stepwise. So that's why we suggest that you should always attempt all the questions, even though you might feel that you are not able to arrive at the correct conclusion. Like your total tax liability may be wrong, but yes, if there are 5 or 6 items in the question, and you have made correct treatment for, let's say, out of 5 or 3 items, then yes, you will get stepwise marks. But your whole marks won't be deducted just because you're not able to arrive at the correct conclusion. So whatever you know is always advisable to attempt all the questions, because there is always a stepwise marks for the computational problem. Then another query which we receive is, do I need to specify reasons for the treatment of each of the item? This question is very important, because under examination, but sometimes we find the students generally commit mistake is that they just add on or subtract the items. They just do the treatment for the particular item while arriving at the solution, but they did not induce their answers with the proper reasoning. Like they don't give reasons. If they just say now Deepak will explain a few services like which are exempt from tax in a detailed manner. So if under a particular service, let's say there are 4 specific items, yeah, 4 specific services, type of nature of services which are exempt or which are not exempt. So what students generally do in the examination is that they just add on or they just subtract the items and arrive at the answer, but they do not give reasoning for the treatment of each of the items. And thus they ended up in losing marks. So the answer for the question that do I need to specify reasons for the treatment of each of the items, the answer is yes. Reasoning is very important. Your answer must be supported with the working notes. Working notes do carry marks, and you will get the full marks for your answer only if your answer is supported by proper legal reasoning. Whatever is the law behind the, whatever is the reason, whatever is the legal backing behind the treatment of a particular item, whether you add it, even if, one thing important is that even if you do not give any treatment for it, like if something is given which you need not add, neither you add or nor you need to subtract, even then you need to give reason for not considering that particular item. So reasoning is very important for everything, whatever is given in the question. Why you have given the particular treatment for that item, only then you will be able to get the full marks for the question. If you don't give reason, then you won't. You will end up in losing marks, right? Then another query pertaining to computational problem which we receive is, what type of computational problems can be asked in exams? See, there are various types of computations problems which can be asked in exams. Like in earlier chapter supply, Deepak must have explained with you the composition scheme. So computational problem can also be asked out of composition scheme. Then these exemptions from GST. Later on, you will understand the value of supply. So how to compute the value of a particular supply. What is the value of supply, determination of value of supply. Then input tax credit will be there. So input tax credit, after studying the input tax credit, you will find that a detailed question, a full-fledged question involving the chargeability, reverse charge, time of supply, value of supply, exemptions from GST, and input tax credit can be asked in the examination. But right now we are discussing this chapter exemptions from GST. So we will focus upon what type of computational problems can be asked in exams from this topic, like exemptions from GST. So in case of exemptions from GST, generally like when you read the services now, when you will come to know like there are agriculture services, education services, and services provided by government, and there's likewise there are so many services. So sometimes it might happen that a computational problem is just asked out of a particular nature of service, like agriculture. So there are so many nitty-gritties involved in a particular service that you need to go through what exactly is exempt from GST and what is not exempt. So a question may be given on a particular service like like agriculture or education or anything else. Then then it might be given that you need to determine the liability to pay tax, right? Another question is, from where can I practice such problems? See, there are ample number of illustrations as well as questions and answers given in the study material from where you can practice such problems. This study material is basically an integrated one. It involves the statutory provisions, detailed discussions, diagrammatic presentations, summaries, illustrations, examples, and a lot of questions and answers for practice are given in the study material itself at the end of the chapter in the test your knowledge section. So you need not worry about it. And moreover, after practicing from the study material, you can also go through the revision test papers, mock test papers, that will, apprise you about, how to appear in the examination. Like mock test paper is basically a replica of the main examination, the examination pattern basically. So in 3 hours, your practice and everything, you will come to know how far you are able to solve your paper. The next question which we receive is, basically this is not a question. This is the, basic concepts pertaining to exemptions from GST. Where does exemptions from GST, what is its role, and when, at what point of time it comes into play, right? So let's discuss it. First of all, we need to determine chargeability of to GST. Determination of chargeability to GST is the first step, right? First of all, we need to determine whether a particular supply of goods or supply of services, whether it is chargeable to GST or not. Then if something is chargeable to GST, then we come to know the second stage, determination of liability to pay tax. See, if something is chargeable to GST, then we decide whether we are liable to pay tax or not. That we come to know whether, then we decide whether a particular exemption is given in the case of supply of that good or supply of services. If yes, then liability to pay tax will be nil, even though the same supply is chargeable to GST. But if something is chargeable to GST and there is no exemption, if something is chargeable to GST and there is no exemption, then that supply will be liable, there will be a liability to pay tax on that particular supply. However, if something is chargeable to GST, but there is exemption available in case of GST, exemption from GST is there. In that case, in case of supply of goods or services, then although the same supply will be chargeable to GST, but the liability to pay tax in that case will be nil, right? So let's discuss what is exempt supply basically. Exempt supply, the definition of exempt supply is given under section 247 to subsection 47 of CGST Act, and it involves three kinds of supply. One is supply of any goods and or services which attracts nil rate of tax. So if any supply attracts nil rate, then that will be considered as exempt supply. Second one is exempt supply which may be wholly exempt from tax. If something is wholly exempt, then that is exempt supply. And it also includes non-taxable supply. And I hope that non-taxable supply you have already discussed in chapter this charge of GST. But again, let me retreat with you what is non-taxable supply. The definition of non-taxable supply is given under section 2, subsection 78 of CGST Act. And it means a supply of goods and or services which is not leviable to tax under CGST Act IGST Act. The point to notice here is that non-taxable supply is a supply of goods and or services which is not leviable to tax. So even if you go through the study material, the examples of the supply which are not leviable to tax are already given, and that you have already studied in the previous chapters. Like examples of supply which are not leviable to tax are alcoholic liquor for human consumption, specified petroleum products, namely petroleum crude, high-speed diesel, motor spirit, natural gas, and aviation turbine fuel. So the supplies which are not at all leviable to tax, that are also considered as exempt supply. They are non-taxable supply, and non-taxable supply are included in the definition of exempt supply. So this is the point where generally students commit mistake. So I hope that I have discussed the basic concepts pertaining to exemptions from GST, and as well as the general query pertaining to computational problems. And I hope there is no query pertaining to this. And right now, let's hand over the session to Deepak. He will take over the technical part. If there is anything you want to ask for me regarding this general query, you may ask. Over to Deepak.
Thank you, madam. Yeah. Are you able to hear me? Madam, is my voice audible?
Yes, your voice is audible.
Okay. So there are some questions which are there. You can just answer them, ma'am. Okay, I'll read out the questions for you. One is the same marking applicable to income tax also?
Please repeat the question.
Is the same marking applicable to income tax also?
Who has asked the question?
Miss Pooja.
Pooja, the basic principle remains the same, whether the paper is for direct taxes or for indirect taxes. This is the general rule. Basically, you get the full marks for your answer only when your answer is supported by reasoning, proper legal reasoning. Working notes should form part of your answer. So if there is any computational problem, Pooja, then you need to answer your question with the proper reasoning supported by working notes. And even I think this is given as a, few, like when you get the question paper, these lines form part of the paper. They are given at the top of the paper that working notes should form part of the answer. So yes, the same applies for income tax as well.
Okay. So other question is, do presentation of computation is required for MCQ based question?
For multiple choice based questions, basically, you need not give reasoning for your answer. The one of the advantage you can say, or one of the time savings thing which is there in case of MCQs is that you need not give reasoning, any sort of reasoning for multiple choice questions. So in MCQs, obviously, only you need to give the correct answer. No reasoning is required, whether it is computational based or not. Though you will obviously to arrive at the correct answer in case of computation questions, you will do some rough working. You will do some rough working, but that is not required from examination. That will not form part of the answer basically.
Yeah. Apart from this, there is no major questions being asked. Should I write provision in our own language? Like generally, should they reproduce the section?
No, you can always write your answer in your own language. There is never any, need of learning or verbatim the language of the law. You can always write in your own language. You just can understand the law, interpret it correctly, and then you can write the answer in your own language. There's never any issue that you need to just reproduce the legal language. You can always write in your own language. So Deepak, let's start with the technical session. So friends, I'm handing over the session to Deepak, and he will apprise you with all the technical aspects. Basically, as I have told you, that exemptions for supply of goods is excluded from the syllabus by study guidelines. I have already discussed this in while taking the first session, and only exemptions for supply of services are covered. So Deepak will apprise you with all the exemption services, significant services which are exempted from GST. So without taking much time of yours, I will try to cover each and few general topics as and when we get time to interact with you. So thank you, and over to Deepak.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, students. Welcome back. We are moving forward on a swift note. We have covered the chargeability section very well in the last class. We understood the provisions of composition levy, and the structure of this MCQs is really helping to make this interactive. And I could see that a lot of questions have also been asked. That's a good thing. And thank you, Swati ma'am, for coming on a timely basis and giving updates to the students on the general questions what they have, which I may not be able to answer. So that's a good thing that you're coming in and giving them the inputs These input students will be really helpful to you, because generally if you go for other classes, they take a separate session for only explaining the strategy and things, but full one session will be really tedious. So coming up and explaining in bits will be really helpful. That is what Swati ma'am is trying to do. Great. So ma'am has covered the basics of exemption. So I will just touch in brief what does exemption and what we are looking out for. Okay. So exemptions, first is we have to understand chargeability. Basically, what is chargeability? We knew in last class that everything is chargeable. What is chargeable? All goods and services are chargeable except alcoholic liquor and 5 petroleum products. So we know that these things are outside the scope of GST itself. That anything we do, a supply of goods, we do trading of goods, or we do hiring of goods, all of that is chargeable as supply, because supply includes those 8 definitions of goods and services. So sale, barter, exchange, license, lease, rental, all of that of goods or services is covered, except alcoholic liquor for human consumption. I've just mentioned alcoholic liquor, but it's actually alcoholic liquor for human consumption, and 5 petroleum products, which means that supply is not leviable to tax. That is supply not leviable tax or non-taxable supply. Okay. So on alcoholic liquor, it is not leviable to tax, and on this 5 petroleum products, it is non-taxable supply. Okay. Then we know that this is chargeable, right? What is not chargeable are only 1 plus 5, these products. After you know what is chargeable, everything is chargeable. Nothing is outside GST. Everything is chargeable. Then comes, once if it is chargeable, then we have to see whether it is exempt or no. Okay, so we need to further check. So if somebody gives you a product and says you, please let me know the GST rate. So you will not directly go and see the GST rate. You have to come through this flow. You have to check whether it is chargeable. If it is chargeable, fine. Then next step would be to see the exemption notification. So you have to check whether the particular goods or services is exempted. If it is exempted, then no tax, else it will be liable to tax as per the rate notification, which we have discussed in the previous session on how to find the GST rate for goods. There is a separate notification for goods and there is a separate rate for services. Okay, so that is how we see the rate of a product. First see the chargeability, then go to the exemption notification. Now, what is the definition of exempt supply? Okay, so this section 2 subsection 47, okay, gives the definition of exempt supply. It says supply of any goods or services or both which attracts nil rate of tax or which is wholly exempt from tax, and it also includes non-taxable supply. Okay, so there are 3 different variables in this. Supply of goods or services which attracts nil rate of tax. What is nil rate of tax? There's a rate notification, right? In that rate notification, if the rate specified is nil, it means it is a nil rated supply. That is one category of exempt supply. Second category of exempt supply is which is wholly exempt from tax. How is it wholly exempt? Through an exemption notification. So we'll see those notification which is there for various category of services. Now that is also a category of exempt supply. Okay, so 2 categories. One is which attracts nil rate of tax, and second is which is wholly exempt from tax, and it also includes non-taxable supply. That is, these 5 petroleum products are non-taxable supply. So you need to understand that non-taxable supply is separately being defined, but still it is included under the definition of exempt supply. Even though exempt means only nil and wholly exempt, but they have covered that any non-taxable supply is also included under the definition of exempt supply. So if they give you a categorization of various supplies and they say identify the total value of exempt supply, you shouldn't miss out on non-taxable supply, saying that no, this is there outside the scope of GST. No, even though products are outside the scope of GST, they are included within the meaning of exempt supply. Okay, why so? That is a more of a technical reason, saying that when you calculate the exempt supply, you'll have to reverse your input tax credit, right? That's the reason they've included all those items which is exempted and also those items on which tax is not payable. Total of that they've included under the definition of exempt supply. Exemption could be, now what are the various kinds of exemption? Exemption could be in terms of specified activities, or it could be for specified suppliers, Like specified activities, I would say that hospital services, healthcare services is an activity which is exempted. Specified supplier could be suppliers who are supplying it to educational institutions. Or educational institutions is a supplier who is supplying services. That could be an example of specified suppliers. Then specified recipients. So based on the recipient, so if it is a government to government service, so if the government is a recipient, then it is exempt. So that could be an example of specified recipient. It could be specified recipients and suppliers. That could be specified suppliers and specified recipients. So supplier should be this category of person and recipient should be this category of person. तब exemption मिलेगा. So there are various categories of exemptions. हमको categorization सिर्फ सीखने के लिए है, but हम जब exemptions में जाएंगे तब all the exemptions पढ़ना पड़ेगा. These are only categorization. Categorization just अपने understanding के लिए है. लेकिन जब हम exemption specific exemption जाएंगे तब हमको clear होगा कि क्या क्या तरह के exemptions होते हैं. और हम लोग कैटेगरी वाइज जाएंगे. जैसे पहले जाएंगे चैरिटेबल ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, फिर एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस. वैसे कैटेगरी वाइज हम लोग एग्जेम्पशंस पढ़ेंगे. Which goods are covered, dear sir, which goods are covered in nil rated tax? So their rate notification, when we see there are few products on which the rate is nil. So those are nil. अगर goods में भी नहीं है तो services में भी we'll see that services में there is a mention of nil. Okay. Non-taxable supply, Schedule 3 is also not chargeable. So Schedule 3 also is a category of non-taxable supply itself. Does LPG for domestic use come under GST? Yes, Pooja. LPG for domestic use comes under the GST because LPG को उन्होंने exclusion नहीं किया है. What are the other usage of alcoholic liquor other than human consumption? For industrial consumption, alcoholic liquor is also used for industrial consumption because not consumption, usage. So industry में जब use होगा, so there is some use of that in some kind of chemicals and some kind of medicinal usage. So there also it is used. So that is the alcoholic liquor for you or scientific for industrial consumption. What is the difference between these three terms? There is lot of difference. जब nil rate होगा तो the classification is different. When it is exempt, the treatment ultimately it's same. Ki when you make an exempt supply, your input tax credit is not available. But there is a difference between nil and exempt supply. Is exempted through notification is one category. Non-taxable supply is outside the scope of GST. So the implication of non-taxable supply is the input tax credit may still be retained. That could be an argumentative thing, saying that on a non-taxable supply, since this is not under the scope of supply itself, why should I reverse the input? That's the reason they have put it inside the definition of exempt supply to make sure that input tax credit on non-taxable supply is also reversed. Okay. Second, next, understood, Ms. Riddhi. Ms. Pooja, why do we have three different headings when they ultimately mean the same? What three different headings? I didn't understand. Nil rate, exempt rate, and turn. So if they don't include now non-taxable supply under exempt supply, then the question of input tax credit will come to arise, saying that should I reverse my input tax credit on non-taxable supply? Since it is not an exempt supply, why should I reverse it? That's the reason to clarify that, to not to make that confusion. They have included now exempt supply. Non-taxable supply is also included under exempt supply. Okay. Any more questions which I left out? Okay. Yes. So Shruti, alcoholic liquor for industrial process is charged to GST? Yes. Because specifically industrial consumption, this liquor for human consumption is exempt from GST, but industrial liquor for alcoholic liquor for industrial purpose is liable to tax. Ms. Riddhi Singhal, I'm getting your questions. Are you able to understand my answer? Okay. So we understood what is exempt supply definition. Now, what is goods which are exempted from MC? This is only to just let you know that first of all, exemption on goods is not available for the question for the exams, but just to understand why there is exemption, what products are exempt. Basic products, milk, eggs, curd, basic products, gur, then unbranded maidas, unbranded and branded, the issue is going on now. But basically, it was said that unbranded atta and maida, on that there is no, the GST, that is all be exempted. Raw silk, okay. Then raw jute, basically on those products. And healthcare services, you'll see that healthcare services and education services, and a lot of other services also which are exempt from GST. For your exams, exemption from goods is not there, because that will come as a bigger list and we don't have to remember those items. So goods which are exempted is not covered in your syllabus. Services which are exempt is definitely covered, because there are a lot of things to interpret there. So exemption with respect to services is covered for your exam. Then some products which are still basic use, but they said, okay, we will levy some tax on that. So 5% GST is levied. Somebody is asking on domestic LPG. Yes, on domestic LPG, 5% GST is applicable. Then on sugar, tea, roasted coffee, skimmed milk powder, paneer, these are apparels. These are the few products on which 5% GST is applicable. Okay. Now, what are the types of exemption? Section 11 is the exemption, wherein it gives the power to give some exemption, because where does all the notifications get power from? So there has to be some place where the exemption power comes from. So they just cannot issue any notification just like that. There has to be a section under the Act which will give you this exemption. So section 11 is that section which reads as: central or state government, based on the recommendation of the council on taxable goods or services or of any specified description, is satisfied that it is necessary in the public interest, then by notification they can exempt the goods. Now this could be by notification, which is a exempt. You can exempt the goods, exempt the services generally, which should be absolutely, or it could be again subject to some conditions, which means, like we have seen that some exemptions are there, like some reverse charge we have seen. No, there is a exemption subject that the input tax credit is not available. Like we have seen the goods GTA services saying that it is under reverse charge generally, but if the supplier wants to pay, he can pay it and he can claim the input tax credit, right? If he doesn't want to claim the input tax credit, then the rate is different. So that is an example of a subject conditional exemption, wherein some conditions are attached. Similarly, in exemption notification also, when they give a notification, they can give just exemption without any condition, which is called as absolutely, which means it is not optional. When it is absolute, it is not optional. But if it is subject to condition, it becomes optional. Like I'll tell you, being that there is a exemption on charitable organizations. Now they can be a absolute exemption. If it is absolute, saying that there's no conditions attached to it, it is not subject to any conditions to be fulfilled, then anybody who's doing this charitable organization has to claim this exemption. He cannot say that, no, I will pay taxes and I will claim the input tax credit. Not possible. Because if the notification for exemption is absolute, then, and without any, absolute means without any conditions, then it is not optional, it is compulsory that they have to follow this exemption notification. On the other hand, if it is subject to some conditions, then it becomes optional, because that conditions I may be able to fulfill or no. So when it is subject to conditions, it becomes optional. Now, the exemption could be further of whole of the tax or part of the tax. But generally, we have seen the notifications for services and goods now coming in for whole of the tax, not for part of the tax. But there is a notification on the on the real estate. When the real estate is there, part of the tax is exempted. They've said that this is the rate of tax, but 1/3 of the value will be exempted for considering the land value. So that is a kind of part of the tax is payable. Part of the value is considered there. So part of the tax you can say is taxable and part of the tax is exempted. Then notification section 11.2 says that it can be 11.1 says that it could be passed by a notification. Okay, the exemption could be given by a notification, or the second option is it could be given by a special order. Okay, exemption could be by a special order under exceptional circumstances explicitly specified in such an order. So generally exemptions are given by notification, but the government feels that the exemption is the notification is not justifiable, or the directly it has to come from the ministry. Then they can give an exemption through a special order. Okay, it means that under exceptional circumstances explicitly specified in the order. So it has to mention what are the circumstances which gave reason to the order, and it will be generally it has to be from whole of the tax. It cannot be from the part of the tax. So when they give an order, it will apply for whole of the tax, and it should be only under certain special circumstances which has to be mentioned in the order itself. Now, when the government considers that it is necessary for the purpose of clarifying the scope or applicability of a notification order. So once I've given a notification or I've given an order, then they can insert an explanation in the notification or order as the case may be within 1 year. So once they passed a notification, now after they passed a notification, there were some clarifications or there were some confusion. So that's the reason what they've done is they have inserted an explanation. So that explanation, when can they do? They can do within a period of 1 year. Within 1 year from the notification is passed, they can insert an explanation. Now this explanation could be clarificatory, and it will have a retrospective effect. Retrospective effect means it will be with effect from the date when the notification was passed. Like say a notification is passed on 1st of June 2022. Okay, 1st June 2022 they passed. After the notifications passed, there was some confusion, and they've inserted a clarification through an explanation saying that notification is there. Now explanation is inserted through another notification on 1st of September 2022. Now the effect of that notification which is inserted on 1st September 2022 will be with retrospectively from 1st June itself, because the explanation is to be applied from the date of original notification, provided that explanation has been given within 1 year from the 1st June. So from 1st June, 1 year means till 31st May 2023, any explanation which is inserted will be having the effect of retrospective effect. Okay, so this happens only in certain exceptional cases when they need to clarify things on a better manner. Okay. So when you say a percentage, example 5%, is it total tax? I mean CGST, SGST? Yes. Whenever we use the tax rate, we mean the both CGST and SGST rate, except when I see specific notification, I explain you the rate notification. There it will be half of the rate. But generally when we see a rate, you should know that there are generally 5 rates which are there: 5%, okay, 12%, 18%, 28%, and 3%. These are the general rates which are there for GST. When I say these rates, it is 2.5% CGST, 2.5% SGST. When I say 18%, 9% is CGST, 9% is SGST. After 1 year, government cannot give an explanation. After 1 year, government can give explanation this data, but that will not have an effect of having it as retrospective. Okay, so whenever it is issued within 1 year, the effect is it will be deemed always to be retrospective. But any explanation which is given after 1 year will not be retrospective. It will be having a prospective effect, which means when the clarification has been issued, when an explanation is inserted, from that day it will be treated as an explanation, not before that. Which means anything done before that will not be falling within the explanation clause. Okay. Now exemptions could be absolute or unconditional, or it could be conditional. When it is absolute or unconditional, then it is mandatory. A registered person doesn't have an option to collect and pay tax. When they're given an exemption, it is for the whole industry without any conditions, then you have to apply the exemption. You cannot go and pay the tax. But if it is conditional, then it becomes optional. It is at the option of the registered person whether to avail the same or no. Okay, so it is up to the option of the person saying that, okay, I can fulfill the conditions or I cannot fulfill the conditions, so I will not apply this exemption. I will pay the tax. Okay, that becomes a really challenging thing, but legally this is the way forward, wherein if any exemption is conditional, then it is optional, not a compulsion, unlike a absolute exemption notification. Somish, till notification comes, the benefits are hold to claim. Correct. Till the notification comes, to the benefits to hold a claim is whatever clarification. If they're giving an explanation, it's generally for some advantageous position. So until that point of time, the old position will continue. But anybody who's taken the advantageous position, then they will be benefited from it. Now, We'll get into a slide mode. I hope this is visible because yeah, it's clearly visible. This will be shared with you when I share the presentation. So you can, this, I think, understanding this exemption, because exemption is quite lengthy and remembering this becomes really tough. So these kind of slides will be helpful to understand what it is, and at least it will help us also to do the revision. Okay, so I've presented few slides. Most of the exemptions do these charts, wherein it will be really helpful to understand how this works. So before getting into the chart on this charitable organization, we'll get into the meanings, what is relevant. Now, where are these exemptions provided in? Firstly, services are exempt from tax under notification number 12 of 2017, right? 13 of 2017 we saw for the rate, and 12 of 2017 central tax rate. This is the notification which gives all the list of exemptions, all the list of services which are exempt from tax. So 12 of 2017 is for services. First is services related to charitable activities. Okay. Now, it is not that this is the chronological order of what is there in the notification. I'm not going in that order. I'm going into the services order. So there could be various lines under each notification for some services. So I'm clubbing all of that and presenting here, because that's how the study material is structured also, so that you don't get lost in from one serial number to 10 serial number. Then when I come to 10 serial number, I have to relocate you and make you understand first. No. So all the services related to each category is clubbed together so that we understand them clearly. Now, what is services related to charitable activities? What is exempted is services by an entity registered under section 12AA of the Income Tax Act by way of charitable activities. Now, any services, what we generally see is services which is exempted by charitable activities. Similarly, there is an exemption in the income tax also, right? Income tax also defines charitable activities, but the definition under the charitable activities in income tax and the definition over here will be different. So we cannot completely rely on the Income Tax Act. But it says that services by an entity which is registered under 12AA of the Income Tax Act. So an entity which is registered under 12AA, you have to go to the income tax exemption department, the exemption officer, and have to make a request based on my condition, based on my situation, whether I'm providing exempt services or no, whether I'm providing charitable services or not, truly charitable services or no. They will give a exemption through this. So now 12AA is become 12AB. So I'm still using 12AA. So 12AA for your exams will be 12AB. Okay. In the last, I'll give you a slide of the amendments with respect to exemption. There, I'll again tell you that 12AA was the earlier clause, but now the registration is given under 12AB. So services by an entity which is registered under 12AA of the Income Tax Act by way of charitable activities. So what is exempted? Exemption is for the charitable activities which is provided by whom? Provided by an entity which is registered under 12AA. Okay, of the Income Tax Act. So first, if they are registered there, then you will get exemption here. If you are not registered under Income Tax Act, you have not got the registration approved under 12AA or 12AB, then you cannot claim this exemption. Okay, first you have to get a registration done under the Income Tax Act. If you get it over there also, what are the activities which are exempted? Charitable activities are exempted. What are the charitable activities is given here. Charitable activities means activities relating to public health by way of care or counseling of terminally ill persons or persons with severe physical or mental disability. Okay. So what is exempted? Charitable activities. Charitable activities is defined as, within this notification that defined what is charitable activities. Charitable activities means activities relating to public health by way of care or counseling of terminally ill persons or persons with severe physical or mental disability. So we have to understand this, because not all charitable activities are exempted. Okay, so I'll say that anything I'm doing is for charity. No, not everything is charity. You have to do this activity of public health. So I'm running a temple. Is it exempted? A charitable trust is running a temple. Is it exempted? We'll have to see whether it's fall under any of these things. If it doesn't fall, then it is not exempted. So public health by way activities relating to public health. that the charitable organization should be doing a charitable activity, which is they should be doing a public health by way of care or counseling of terminally ill persons. Now, what public health is also being defined? General public health. They're doing public health services. No, not all public health is exempted. Public health by way of care or counseling of terminally ill persons or persons with severe physical or mental disability, persons afflicted with HIV or AIDS, persons addicted to a dependence forming substance such as narcotics, drugs, or alcohol. Okay, so this should be care or counseling of these kind of people. Persons who are terminally ill or persons with severe physical or mental disability, which means they have broken their knees or something, which means they are not having a limb. That is a care of physical thing. Or mental disability means they are not mentally normal. Okay, so anything care or counseling services of that will be exempted. The persons afflicted with HIV or AIDS, those patients, persons addicted to a dependence forming substance. So anything which they're dependent on, they're too much dependent on alcohol, or they're too much dependent on drugs. Those people, for them, if there is a center which is run and they're doing the care or counseling of them to come out of it, then that is a public health service. Or public awareness of preventive health, family planning, or prevention of HIV. So the trust which is formed, generally charitable activities would be done by a trust. So that trust is doing the activity of public awareness of preventive health. Okay, which be exempted. Now, what is the meaning of sir, persons affected with cancer also connected? Yeah, terminally ill means which is not curable. That is the meaning of terminally ill, which is generally not curable. Okay, is terminally ill. Okay, so that all those public health for care or counseling of such people, such ill people who have been unfortunately affected by such things is covered under the definition of charitable activities. That is first part. Public health में ये covered है. Second is advancement of religion, spirituality, or yoga. Therefore, charitable activities, they're doing something for the advancement of religion, spirituality, or yoga. Yoga was not there before, they've added it now. So it is an amendment which was passed in 2021, which is relevant for you. So advancement of religion, spirituality, or yoga is also covered under charitable activities. Then advancement of educational program or skill development relating to, very careful, because educational services is exempted, but this and that don't get confused. Educational services exempted, that's fine, but here we are talking of advancement of educational programs or skill development relating to which. There in the healthcare services, in the educational services, we'll see any education services provided up to 10th standard or up to matriculation where degree is given. It could be by anybody is exempted, to anybody is exempted, by anybody to anybody is exempted under educational services. But here it is specifically for this kind of children: abandoned, orphaned, or homeless children, physically or mentally abused and traumatized person, or prisoners, or persons over the age of 65 years residing in rural area. Okay, now if I run something called as a skill development, I'll run stitching classes, or I run a kind of industrial training activities wherein I take up people who are unemployed and I give them training to become carpenters, or I train them to become mechanics. Now, will that be exempted? It will not be exempted because I'm not giving it to these kind of people. If I'm giving to any specifically to abandoned, orphaned, or homeless children, if my objective is I have to find out them and give it, only then it is exempted. Or physically or mentally abused or traumatized persons. We know that some people who are physically unstable or mentally unstable, if I'm giving advanced education program to them only, or I'm giving only to prisoners. So if the prisoners are there and there is some organization which have tied up with the prison officer and they're providing only to prisoners or to persons over the age of 65 years, but not in urban area, to rural area. So senior citizens I will give, but those senior citizens, not those citizens who are there in the country, in the urban area, but who are there in rural area. Okay. Yeah, Section 8 companies under Companies Act are also meant for these kind of activities, so they can get exemption. Yes, Section 8 companies can also get those exemption. Yes, very right. So trust or any charitable organizations or Section 8 companies can also claim this. Sir, amendments relevant to our examination is covered by you in these lectures, or we need to check more amendments before exam? No, I will cover them then if the Board of Studies releases the amendments. Till now they have not released it. Once they release it, and if it is released before my sessions, I will definitely cover it up now. Sombarnika, there's a student called Sombarnika. Your app has a problem, I believe, because I'm seeing so many questions from you, which is all blank. So you can see what do the word terminally mean, sir? I have mentioned it, but you have made the app itself terminally ill, and I'm able to only see so many questions from you. Just see if you have wrongly pressed a button. Okay. So advancement of educational programs or skill development, we have seen that specifically to abandoned, orphaned or homeless children, physically or mentally abused and traumatized person, prisoners or senior citizens. I call them senior citizens, persons over the age of 65 years. So generally we see 60 years as the cutoff, right? But here they mention as 65 years, be careful, 65 years who are residing in rural area. Then any activity of preservation of environment, including watershed, forests and wildlife. Preservation of environment could be what? Preservation of environment, any general environment, saying that air pollution you're stopping, or preserving something for the purpose of noise pollution. And it could further extend to watersheds, could be some lakes, lake preservation you're doing, or forest preservation, wildlife preservation. All of that are covered under the activity of charitable activities. Okay, so all of that is under the charitable activities. So we were here wherein we are saying that services by an entity registered under Section 12AA of the income tax by way of charitable activities. So these activities are exempted. Okay, then services by a specified organization in respect of a religious pilgrimage. So here it should be charitable activities. Then there is a specific exemption of services by a specified organization in respect of religious pilgrimage facilitated by the government of India under bilateral arrangement. So any bilateral arrangement when the government has entered into agreement and that entity, that authority is providing a service of religious pilgrimage, not just a picnic pilgrimage, but a religious pilgrimage, then that is also exempted. Now, what are those organizations which is specified? There are two organizations which is specified: Hajj Committee of India or State Hajj Committee. So Hajj Committee of India could be the Central Hajj Committee or the State Hajj Committee. If they are arranging travel to, generally Hajj Committee will take you to Hajj, Mecca, Medina, they will take, right? So those organizations, services by those organizations are exempted. Okay, so if State Hajj Committee collects some charges, then that will be exempted. Or Kumaon Mandal Vikas Nigam Limited, wherein generally in the Kumaon Mandal Vikas Nigam, I'm sorry, where it is? This is in for the there's Kumaon Mandal is generally there in the 1 minute. Kumaon Mandal is there in Himalayas kind of a thing, wherein they are also there for development of travel between the two countries, or movement between for pilgrimage travel agent. This is that 1 minute, Kedarnath or something. They take trips, if I'm not mistaken, they take trips for Himalayan region. Yeah. So Himalayan region, whatever trips, pilgrimage trips they take, it has to be done through this authority. So the services provided by this authority is also exempted. So pilgrimage trip, if they do any other trip, then that will be taxable. This is specifically pilgrimage trip itself. Watershed means any water flown area. It could be a lake, dam, or anything. That is meaning of watershed. Is exemption chapter important for exams? Yes, it is very important, because in your problem solvings, you'll also get to know that when a problem is given, they will not pick up one chapter, they'll pick mix of chapters. They will give that these are the activities which is done by a trader. Now that trader could be dealing with goods, he could be dealing with services, he could be dealing with, he could also be running a orphanage. Now then you have to find out what is the taxable, what is the value of tax on which GST will be paid. Okay, so when something like this is done, okay, then you will have to that this services of running a kind of charitable organization is exempted. So you have to not tax it, and you cannot ignore it. Like how Swati ma'am was saying, you need to give explanation for not including something. So you should know what is includable and what is not includable. That's the reason you'll have to understand this charitable section, because there could be questions specifically on exempted activities also. Okay, so that's why this is very important. Hitesh Jain, yeah, thank you for pointing out. Kumaon Mandal Vikas Nigam is for Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. So that is a pilgrimage trip which is excluded. Persons residing in urban area over the age of 65 years are also covered. No, person residing in urban area over the age of 65 is not covered. Only persons residing in rural area over the age of 65 is covered. Okay. Services by way of Hajj Committee for Hajj pilgrimage, and then for Kailash Mansarovar Yatra by KMVN, that is exempted. Then services by way of training or coaching in recreational activities. Okay, activities relating to services by way of training or coaching in recreational activities relating to arts and culture. Okay, any art training or coaching in recreational activities. So if the organization is providing training or coaching in arts or culture, now this is not a activity which is provided by a charitable organization. It could be provided by anybody, because this was the main entry which was covered. Why I've included this is, here it says sports by charitable entities registered under 12AA. So 12AA exemption for charitable organization is covered under various headings. First is this heading, which covers most of the exemptions. Then services by way of training and coaching in recreational activities. So if a private organization is providing training in respect of arts or culture, okay, it could be like a Kathakali dance. It could be like a Kerala's traditional knife fighting thing. Okay, in that case also it is exempted, or anything to do with culture. So if it has been for training and coaching is provided, private institution is also exempted. Then specifically sports by charitable entities, training or coaching by any private entity for sports is taxable, but training and coaching for sports by a charitable entity is exempted. By a private entity will be taxable, like I'm going for cricket coaching. Okay, so that's a sports. Right? Can I call it under art and culture? No, that's not art and culture. Specifically, it's a sports. So sports training, if I'm going and the trainer charges me tax, charges me the training charges, he will be liable to charge me GST also. But if that training organization, training unit is run as a charitable organization, it's a charitable entity and is run registered under 12AA, then that is exempt, not by the private entity. Okay, but if that private entity is providing some arts and cultures, then it is exempted. Okay, services exempt from tax. Services by way of, what else is exempted? Services by way of conduct of any religious ceremony, or wherein the pandit services. If a pandit is doing any marriage services or doing any puja services, all of those are religious ceremony, right? So conduct of any religious ceremony or renting of precincts of a religious place meant for general public, owned or managed by an entity registered as a charitable or religious trust under 12AA of the Income Tax Act, or an institution registered under 1023C, or a body or authority covered under 1023BB of the IT Act. So that is the definition, but you don't have to remember those sections. Basically, remember 12AA. And if there's an organization which is registered under 1023C or 1023BBA, then if those entities are providing the place, okay, presence of a religious place meant for general public, owned and managed by these entities. Then what is exempt? Basically, there should be a religious place, presence of a religious place means surrounding or nearby the religious place within the compound. Okay, so if I'm having a kind of say church here in the main ground, and I have a big ground, and after the ground I have some place, so that will be called, and that place I'm giving as rental, then it will be exempted because that will be treated as renting of presence. Now, when is this renting of presence and what is the value up to which it is exempted? Provided nothing contained in entry of this exemption will apply to renting of rooms where charges are 1,000 rupees or more per day. Okay, so it should be what? It should be renting of rooms. If they have some rooms, they can rent it. That will be exempted if the rents are chargeable, where rents, it is, they're saying this in a negative manner, right? So they're saying provided nothing contained in this entry in this exemption shall apply to renting of rooms where charges are rupees 1,000 or more per day. So if the renting of room services is being provided and the room charges what they're collecting is 1,000 rupees or more than 1,000 rupees, then it is taxable. So if it is 999 rupees, then it is exempted. If it is 1,000 rupees, then it will be taxable on the whole 1,000 rupees, not like a kind of a limit where you will exclude it. This is the limit wherein above that, whatever is there will be taxable and the whole amount will be taxable, and where it is less, fully will be exempted. So 999, you have to remember. If it is 1,000 rupees and more, it will be taxable. That is for renting of rooms. Renting of presence, community hall, kalyana mandapam or open area, and like where the charges are rupees 10,000 or more per day. So if they have a community hall, a church generally we see have a community hall, or a temple also will have some kind of community hall wherein the marriage ceremony can take place. So if they are renting these and the rent what they collect is up to 9,999 rupees per day, then it will be exempted. But if it is 11,000 rupees, then the whole 11,000 will be taxable. Okay. Third is renting of shops or other spaces for business where the charges are rupees 10,000 per month. So here you have to remember 1,000 per day for room, 10,000 rupees for kalyan mandapam, and that is per day, and 10,000 rupees for rental of the shops. Any shops are places of business or commerce, basically shops where it is rented out. And if you're running some flower shops or something like that over there, generally within the temple, around the temple, what will you have? You'll have shops which will sell the flowers, will sell agarbattis and those things. That will be exempted if the religious organization is collecting rent up to 9,999. Above that, it will be taxable. Okay. Renting of precincts. Paramedics, Ayush, are asking the question, what is the meaning of presence? Presence means the surroundings within the religious organization area or just close to it. Now we'll get into this chart to understand this better. Charitable activities. What are the charitable activities which are exempted? We have covered this. Charitable activities. Entity, first it should be an entity registered under 12AA or 12AB of the Income Tax Act, and the charitable activities relating to, okay, public health by way of care or counseling. So first is public health by way of care or counseling of terminally ill, severely physically or mentally disabled, or it could be in relation to HIV or AIDS infected persons or any drugs or alcoholic addicts. That will be exempted. Then public awareness of preventive health, family planning or prevention of HIV infections. First is care and counseling. Second is public awareness of any preventive health or family planning. Okay, so this will be exempted. Advancement of religion, spirituality and yoga. Advancement of any kind of religion, spirituality and yoga. And then advancement of educational program or skill development relating to abandoned, orphaned or homeless children, physically, mentally abused or traumatized person, prisoners or persons above the age of 65 years residing in rural areas, or it could be for preservation of environment, watershed, forests and wildlife. Okay, all of this is covered under the first category of charitable activities relating to these activities. Second is what is the exemption given? Entity which is registered under 12AA and which is running old age home for residents above 60 years. So we have to be careful. Here there are two things. Here we are using 65 years. This is for advancement of educational program. Here we are seeing old age home. Here it is above 60 years. The difference between 65 years and 60 years. Here we are seeing 60 years. So old age home for residents above 60 years, if it has been running, then it is exempted, provided the consideration is up to 25,000 rupees per person per month. Okay, per person per month. If they are charging the running of a old age home and they're collecting kind of monthly charges, that charges, if it is up to 25,000 rupees per month, then it becomes exempted. Now that could include consideration could be for boarding, lodging, maintenance, for these three things. Generally it'd be for this only, right? When an old person is sent something, what do you need? You need shelter, you need food and maintenance. So boarding, lodging and maintenance, all of this, if it is covered within the consideration, then up to 25,000 rupees, it is exempted. Note, old age home which is run by central government or state government are also exempt. So this old age home can be run by whom? It could be run by charitable organizations or it could be run by the central government, state governments, that is also exempted. Okay. Then what else is exempted? Services of old age we have seen. Then services by rehabilitation professionals. Okay, rehabilitation professionals means who are doing rehabilitation here. Now we know that there are some special diseases like who are addicted to alcohol or addicted to drugs. They need a rehabilitation service. The rehabilitation is covered. We have seen that rehabilitation services is exempted because prevention of HIV and things like that. Then care or counseling of HIV, AIDS, drugs, alcoholic addicts is exempted. Now, who will provide these services to that organization? There will be rehabilitation professionals. Now, these rehabilitation professionals will charge something to such organizations or such hospitals. Now, the services of these rehabilitation professionals is also exempted in relation to what services they provide. They provide rehabilitation services or they provide therapy services or counseling services. Those also will be exempted if they provide it to an entity which is registered under 12AA or to medical institutions. Now they provide some services to hospitals also, that also will be exempted. They can provide to educational institutions. What they can provide? Counseling, saying that these things are incorrect. So if they collect some charges from the schools or colleges, that is also exempted. Or rehabilitation centers established by central government or state government, wherever they are providing this rehabilitation professional services, it will be exempted. Now, if a rehabilitation of a professional provides this therapy session to a company, wherein a company wants some kind of a employee empowerment and wants them to be legally, ethically correct, they call it rehabilitation professionals. So rehabilitation professional providing services to private companies or private organizations is taxable because they can if they provide to only these four places: entity registered at 12AA, medical institutions or educational institutions, or rehabilitation services centers set up by the central government, state government, or the union territory. Only then it will be exempted. But if they provide services to a private company, then it will be taxable. Okay. Then renting of presence of a place. Old age home means Vriddhashram. Yeah, Vriddhashram, basically, which is a run for people who are of elderly and they need a home kind of a thing. Then that services is called as a old age home. Today's class, we have seen very, very less interaction, less questions. Please be really participative. I know this is a very, very lengthy subject, but each and every moment is important. So I've not just presented like a normal presentation. It will be further dry for you. I put it in charts. I'm trying to find out that which way works best and which way you can remember this is what I'm trying to portray and put it across so that you can remember things. The really lengthy chapter, there's so many exemptions, you'll get confused. But if you go through these slides, it will be really helpful to you. Okay. So at the end of this or this topic on charitable organization, charitable activities, I need a lot of questions because if there's some confusion, clear it now instead of getting it confused later on. Okay. So second, other kind of exemption is renting of presence of a religious place meant for general public if room rent is up to 999 per day, premises for Kalyana Mandapam up to 9,999 per day, and shops up to 999 per month. Okay, so 999 is the number. Up till that it is exempted. Anything above that will become taxable. Further, Pandit services are also exempted. Now, this need not be a 12AA unit. Generally, organizations, Pandits are not registered and they can provide to any public also. So, Pandit services, which means people who are doing a religious ceremony, they are exempted. Hostel accommodation by trust. Okay. Now, there could be some rooms which have been given. Okay. Now, these rooms, like if I give something, and those are also exempted. Up to 999 per day is exempted. This is generally applicable for any hostel. Okay, so hostel accommodation, it could be by a trust or it could be by any schools or colleges. They will be taxable. Like if I'm running a school, okay, educational services exempted, but educational services does not include this rental of hostel. Now, for hostel, if I'm collecting some charges, that will be taxable if I'm charging more than 1,000 rupees per day. Okay, generally it will be less, so it will be exempted. So up till 999, if a college is charging me the hostel accommodation, then it will be exempted. So if the hostel says that no, our college says that hostel is very good, we're providing all modern amenities, and the rent is up to 1,500 rupees, then it will be taxable. That will not fall under the exemption. Okay. Next is training or coaching. Training or coaching in recreational activities relating to sports. Training or coaching in recreational activities relating to arts or culture is exempt by any person, not necessarily a charitable organization. So what we saw is only sports is exempted if it is provided by 12AA. Arts and culture can be provided by any entity. Then services or pilgrimage conducted by Kumau Mandal Vikas Nigam Limited and Hajj Committee is exempted. Okay. This is in nutshell the total exemption for charitable or religious activities. Questions here. Sir, the old person who are homeless, how can they pay consideration of 25,000? There are practically in urban areas, we've seen that people who don't, very unfortunate that their children are there and they don't want their parents to stay with them and they send them to this old age home. So the consideration of 25,000 is very less. They pay up to 50,000 per month also, and they send their parents to stay at the home, the old age home. So they're not homeless, I would say. They are having homes, or if they're homeless also, the charges would be very less because staying and maintaining would become very problematic. So they charge up to 10,000 rupees per month. Some organizations charge 5,000 rupees per month so that the elderly people are not affected. So they charge it. So they've said that if up to 25,000 is reasonable and considered as exempted, above that will be taxable. The notes you're not able to see, it will be updated. It will, for my previous sessions, it will be updated and I will update it tomorrow. If you don't get it by next class, you let me know. Okay. To zoom in the charts, yes, it is possible. But if I zoom in, some things will get cut out. So I will not be able to zoom in. Okay. When I'm explaining a topic, like I was explaining a home, old age home, then I will zoom in so it becomes clear to you. But this chart was clearly visible without zoom in. That's why I did not zoom in. But yeah, wherever it is required, I will zoom in and then explain you. Fine. Charitable activities, you understood. This hostel need to be registered under 12AA? No. Now this hostel, what I was explaining here, hostel accommodation by trust, this is a general applicable to any hostel. That's why I'm mentioning this, that it need not be registered under 12AA. So this is non-12AA exemptions. One is Pandit services is non-12AA, and hostel accommodation by trust up to 999 per day is exempted. This is not only by a trust, it could be by anybody. Okay. Hotel accommodation also. So hotel accommodation also same limit applies. Hotel accommodation up to 999 is exempted. Sir, please refer to entry number. Okay. So all this charitable is clubbed together. So wherever it is necessary, I'll mention the entry number also. Okay. Charitable organizations, we've covered. What are the charitable activities? Also, we have covered. Services, what are the charitable activities? Again, services provided by charitable trust of specified services are exempted, but services, yeah, very important here. We go one by one. Services provided by charitable trust of specified services is exempted, but services provided to charitable trust are not exempted and would be taxable. Like charitable organizations provide food to the as a part of general awareness, general thing. It provides food to food free of cost. Now, for that, if it buys food and if food items is exempted as product, it's fine. Then if it buys LPG cylinder, things like that, we know on LPG cylinder, the rate is 5%. So can they say that our services are exempted, so you don't charge me? No, they cannot say that. So anything what they purchase on that, if GST is applicable, GST will be levied, that will not be exempted. So services provided or goods provided to charitable trust are not exempted. That will be leviable to tax. They cannot claim the input tax credit because it is exempted for them. So, but the organizations or the vendors who are supplying to charitable activities, they will continue to charge GST, but these charitable activities will not charge GST. Okay, so services provided to charitable activities, is it exempt? No, it is not exempt. It is taxable, but services provided by charitable trust is exempt. Okay, renting of presence of a religious place for general public, which means activities other than the above will be taxable. Renting of presence of a religious place for general public is also a charitable activity. Activities other than above will be taxable irrespective of the manner or name in which it is collected, which means donation which is collected for with an understanding to do promotional activity, such donation will be liable to GST, right? So any donation what they collect, we cannot say as a general rule that all donations are exempted. No, all 9 major donations is exempted because they are using for charitable activities. But like how we had seen in the first few slides, first few chapters, that if there is a quid pro quo wherein a donation is received to provide something as a return, then that donation also will be taxable, not a uniform thumb rule that all donations will be exempted. Donation which is accepted with an understanding to do something in return will be taxable and GST has to be paid. Generally, they are not registered, sir, then they will have to register and pay it. So, but if there is no quid pro quo, then it is a pure donation, right? So if the quid pro quo is important. Generally for donations, they don't, the person who's donating does not expect anything in return, right? He'll just donate and he'll go off saying that, okay, you do good for the act, but he can do kind of monitoring whether that amount what is paid is correct or no. It's different than doing something in return. Okay, if it's just monitoring that the funds have been utilized properly or not to see that he's overlooking the trust activities, that's fine. That is only supervision of the funds invested. There's nothing like a return what the organization is doing. But if the organization is the company which is giving the donation wants something in return, they say that you have to promote our brand, then it's a quid pro quo. It's not a pure donation then. Okay, so that is the whole chapter on charitable activities. Sir, if old person children is not paying 25,000 and the person have no source of income, can he live free in the old age home? That depends on the old age home if they allow. Not very sure if all old age home permitted, but if some old age home permit, then they can permit it. If they say on the old age home they are not collecting any charges, if they are not collecting any charges, no GST at all. But if they're collecting charges beyond the limit, only then it is taxable. Sir, charitable trust is paying tax to supplier but not collecting for its supply. Then it is disadvantageous to them. It is not kind of a disadvantageous. It is anyways they have to pay GST on whatever they purchase. So if they start charging GST then who will avail their service? So they will not avail the service. So they are at a disadvantageous position. Yes, like how we had said, anywhere in the supply chain where the exemption comes, then the chain gets halt. So it's an additional burden to them. But on the activities, they don't have to pay GST. So to the extent whatever GST is being charged to them, they have to pay it. Yes, that they cannot avoid it. So in the chain, in the input tax credit chain, if anybody is not taxing, if not paying any tax in the chain, then that chain gets stopped and that person will be treated as a consumption. So if if charitable activity would not have purchased, suppose I'm at a old age home, okay, and I have to buy something outside. If I go, I will pay GST. So instead of me buying, this organization is buying, they will provide me food, shelter and things. Instead of me buying, they are buying it. So look at it from that perspective, that they are buying on behalf of me. So they are the consumers ultimately. If I would have not been, though, if they would not have borne it, I would have borne it. So it is a stoppage there. So it is kind of stopping there itself. So it's not a kind of disadvantage, I would say. It is beneficial because their activity is anyways exempted. Okay. What do you mean by quid pro quo? Sunil Kumar, we had discussed this in the chapter of supply. What is quid pro quo means? Something in return. Okay. Something in return is called as quid pro quo. When I sell you something, I want something from you. What do I mean? I need the consideration back. So that consideration, when I give you something, I need something back. That is called as quid pro quo. Can we remember entry number? Not necessary. If you want to remember, that will help you. But if you can't remember the entry number, that is fine. Tuition classes are excluded. Tuition classes under the charitable activities is not exempted, but it can get exempted under the educational trust, so educational services. But in educational services also, tuition charges are of two types. Like school, college fees, what we pay, that they call as tuition charges. That is exempted. But extra tuition, what we conduct for private organizations, like after school, if I go for a tuition classes, is that exempted? No, that is not exempted. That will be taxable. Okay. We have covered the charitable organizations. Before getting into the next activity of agriculture services, we'll take a break of 10 minutes and we'll come back by 7:23 now. So we'll come back by 7:35, around 7:33, 7:35. So we'll meet you after that, after 10 minutes. Okay, thank you. Welcome back, friends. There are some questions which were asked on charitable organizations. Main question is whether all services provided to charitable trusts are taxable. Yes, all services provided to charitable trusts are taxable. Unfortunate, but that's the scenario that services provided by a charitable trust will be exempted, but services provided to charitable trust will all be taxable. Okay. Don't have to feel heartbroken over it. That's the way it's system works, because if they also don't charge, then they will not get the credit. The vendors who will not charge the GST. Somewhere the chain will get broken, so they will be heartbroken. But ultimately, the consumption will be taxable, right? That's the reason charitable trusts, when they take some services or they avail the goods, then it will be taxable. But they providing services will all be exempted. ठीक है? अभी next जाते हैं हम लोग next services पे. एग्रीकल्चर सर्विसेज जाएंगे और यहाँ पे जूम करने की जरूरत पड़ेगी क्योंकि बिना जूम के हम देख नहीं पाएंगे. Okay, before getting into agriculture services, I will share my screen here. और एग्रीकल्चर सर्विसेज में बहुत सारी सर्विसेज हैं, राइट? इसके लिए भी हम फर्स्ट एक्सप्लेनेशन देख लेते हैं, फिर एक्सप्लेनेशन देखने के बाद आगे बढ़ते हैं. What is agriculture related services which is exempted? Services by way of loading, unloading, packaging, storage or warehousing of rice. Okay, specifically पैडी और राइस में कंफ्यूजन रहेगा, तो यहाँ पे हमको देखने की जरूरत है कि बेसिक रिक्वायरमेंट्स आर एग्जेम्प्टेड बट नॉट ऑल. ठीक है, तो सर्विसेज बाय वे ऑफ लोडिंग, अनलोडिंग, पैकेजिंग, स्टोरिंग और एग्रीकल्चर रिलेटेड सर्विसेज बोल रहा हूँ मैं. एग्रीकल्चर सर्विसेज तो एग्जेम्प्ट है ही है, बट व्हाट इज एग्रीकल्चर रिलेटेड सर्विसेज? रिलेटेड सर्विसेज जो होते हैं दैट वो भी एग्जेम्प्टेड है, लेकिन हर चीज के लिए नहीं है. Services by way of loading, unloading, packaging, storage or warehousing of rice exempted है. Services by way of warehousing of minor forest produce. Minor forest produce क्या है वो भी समझाएंगे आपको, बट ये समझ लीजिए कि क्या क्या चीजें exempted है. Services by way of loading, unloading, packaging, storage or warehousing of rice. Service by way of warehousing of minor forest produce. Service by way of storage or warehousing of cereals, pulses, fruits, nuts and vegetables, spices, copra, sugarcane, jaggery, raw vegetable fibers such as cotton, flax, jute, etc., indigo, unmanufactured tobacco, betel leaves, tendu leaves, coffee and tea. Okay, एक मिनट समझे, I just clear this technical stuff. Okay, services by way of warehousing of rice समझ गए. Services by way of warehousing of minor forest produce. Then services by way of storage or warehouse of basic products. इतना लिस्ट याद रखने की जरूरत नहीं है, लेकिन समझने की जरूरत है. अगर समझ जाएंगे तो याद ऑटोमेटिकली हो जाएगा. Services by way of storage or warehousing of cereals, pulses, fruits, nuts and vegetables. Basic, ठीक है. फ्रूट्स, वेजिटेबल, नट्स, खाने के लिए जो बेसिक एसेंशियल चीजें, उनके वेयरहाउसिंग और स्टोरेज पे एग्जेम्पशन है. स्टोरेज में सिर्फ स्टोरेज होता है, वेयरहाउसिंग में दे टेक केयर ऑफ एवरीथिंग, लोडिंग, अनलोडिंग एंड एवरीथिंग. दैट्स द डिफरेंस बिटवीन स्टोरेज एंड वेयरहाउसिंग. स्टोरेज में सिर्फ स्टोरेज की फैसिलिटी मिलती है, वेयरहाउसिंग में आपको कहाँ पे रखना है, स्टोरेज करना है, कहाँ कौन से तरीके से स्टोर करना है, पैकिंग करना है, अनपैकिंग करना है, लोडिंग करना है, अनलोडिंग करना है, सब कुछ होता है, वो वेयर हाउस होता है. ठीक है, उसके अलावा स्पाइसेस है, कोपरा है, शुगर केन है, जैगरी है, रॉ वेजिटेबल फाइबर सच एज कॉटन, फ्लैक्स, जूट, इंडिगो, अनमैन्युफैक्चर्ड टोबैको, जो रॉ टोबैको होता है, बीटल लीव्स, तेंदू लीव्स, कॉफी एंड टी, उसके वेयर हाउसिंग पे भी एग्जेम्पशन मिलता है. देन सर्विसेज बाय वे ऑफ फ्यूमिगेशन इन अ वेयर हाउस ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस. ओके, वेयर हाउस ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस, ओके, जब पे वेयर हाउस है और विच इज स्पेसिफिक वेयर हाउस नॉट फॉर जनरल गुड्स बट फॉर एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस, उसमें फ्यूमिगेशन सर्विसेज, मतलब जो गैस डालते हैं ताकि वहां पे जर्म्स न आ जाए, कीटाणु न आ जाए, उसके लिए फ्यूमिगेशन केमिकल्स वाला गैस डालते हैं, उसको फ्यूमिगेशन बोलते हैं, वो फ्यूमिगेशन सर्विसेज भी एग्जेम्प्टेड रहती है. Then carrying out an intermediate production process as job work in relation to cultivation of plants and rearing of all kinds of mineral except the rearing of horses for food, fiber, fuel, raw materials and other similar products or agriculture produce. तो यहाँ पे क्या बोल रहे हैं, कैरिंग आउट एन इंटरमीडिएट प्रोडक्शन प्रोसेस, जैसे जॉब वर्क को अपॉइंट कर दिया, जॉब वर्कर को छानने के लिए अपॉइंट कर दिया, टू मेक अ रिमूव द हस्क फ्रॉम द सीड्स, टू रिमूव, या कुछ जॉब वर्क दिया जाता है, सो स्पेशलाइज काइंड ऑफ होता है कि आप नहीं कर सकते हो लेकिन जॉब वर्क करता है, जैसे मिर्ची हो रही है, मिर्ची को कूटने का काम, ठीक है, या फिर बीज में से छिलके निकालने का काम, वो अलग एक बंदे को दिया जाता है, वो जॉब वर्क करके देता है, दैट इज ऑल्सो एग्जेम्प्टेड. वो किसके रिलेटेड है, इन रिलेशन टू कल्टिवेशन ऑफ प्लांट्स एंड रेयरिंग ऑफ ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ फॉर्म्स ऑफ एनिमल्स, जैसे एनिमल्स को भी आप रेयरिंग के लिए या उसको ध्यान रखने के लिए आप जॉब वर्क में दे देते हो, ओके, तो वो भी एग्जेम्प्टेड है एक्सेप्ट रेयरिंग ऑफ हॉर्सेस. जो अब एग्रीकल्चर डेफिनेशन पढ़ेंगे वहां पे हम देखेंगे कि ऑल कल्टिवेशन एंड ग्रोइंग ऑफ ऑल एनिमल्स इज एग्जेम्प्टेड बट रेयरिंग ऑफ हॉर्सेस, बिकॉज हॉर्सेस जनरली क्या होते हैं, कमर्शियल पर्पस के लिए यूज होते हैं, तो इसके लिए रेयरिंग ऑफ हॉर्सेस इज ऑलवेज आउटसाइड द स्कोप ऑफ एग्जेम्पशन. Now this job work could be for food, fiber, fuel, raw materials or other similar products or agriculture produce. इनके लिए जो भी एक्टिविटी किए जाते हैं, that will all be exempted. What ideology does the government considers while drafting law, sir? Now here in this point, what significant rice brings so that it is exempted? Rice brings importance because rice is a staple food. बहुत सारी जगहों पे आयुष जी, it is a staple food, तो उसके ऊपर टैक्स नहीं लगना चाहिए. That's why they have kept that all activities relating to rice also as exempted. These agriculture related services exemption are given to whom? To the service receiver. कौन सर्विस रिसीव करेगा, ये सब फार्मर रिसीव करेगा ना, तो फार्मर के लिए ये सब exempted है. Okay, then services relating to cultivation of plants and rearing of all kinds of animals. ठीक है, यहाँ पे जूम चाहिए नहीं चाहिए, ओके. सर्विसेज रिलेटिंग टू कल्टिवेशन ऑफ प्लांट्स एंड रेयरिंग ऑफ ऑल लाइफ फॉर्म ऑफ एनिमल्स. अगेन यहाँ पे एक्सेप्ट किसका है, हॉर्स को एग्जेम्पशन से निकाल दिया गया, एक्सेप्ट द रेयरिंग ऑफ हॉर्सेस फॉर फूड, फाइबर, फ्यूल, रॉ मटेरियल्स और अदर सिमिलर प्रोडक्ट्स. ठीक है, सो सर्विसेज रिलेटिंग टू कल्टिवेशन ऑफ प्लांट्स. ठीक है, now cultivation of plants and rearing of all forms of animals exempted है. Now why do we cultivate? You could cultivate it for food या fiber के लिए, जैसे हम लोग ये शुगर केन को उगाते हैं, उससे से शुगर निकालते हैं, that is food. और जो बैलेंस जो हस्क बचा रहता है उसको क्या करते हैं, फ्यूल में यूज करते हैं. सो दैट यू कैन नॉट से दैट नहीं आपने सिर्फ फूड के लिए बोला है और फ्यूल के लिए यूज करेंगे तो टैक्सेबल होगा, नहीं. इट कुड बी फॉर फूड, इट कुड बी फॉर एनी काइंड ऑफ फाइबर यूसेज, fuel, your raw materials or other similar products or agriculture produce will be exempted. What all kinds, by way of what? Agriculture operation directly related to production of any agriculture produce, including cultivation, harvesting, threshing, plant protection or testing. तो क्या क्या operations covered है? Basically maximum operations exemption में covered हो जाएंगे. उसमें होता है cultivation, normal cultivation of plants या cultivation of animals, rearing of animals. ठीक है, कल्टिवेशन, हार्वेस्टिंग, थ्रेशिंग, प्लांट प्रोटेक्शन और टेस्टिंग. ओके, जब यू सी टू ये होते हैं, दाल होते हैं, उनको थ्रेश करना पड़ता है, दैट इज कॉल्ड थ्रेशिंग, प्लांट प्रोटेक्शन और टेस्टिंग, ऑल ऑफ दिस इज एग्जेम्प्टेड. सप्लाई ऑफ फार्म लेबर, अगर मैं आदमी हूं जो लेबर प्रोवाइड करता हूं एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस को बढ़ाने के लिए, कि उनके पास आदमी लोग नहीं मिलते हैं, तो मैं सिर्फ लेबर सर्विस सप्लाई करता हूं फॉर एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस वाली, तब भी एग्जेम्प्टेड होगा. ठीक है, देन ऑल्सो इट इज एग्जेम्प्टेड. देन प्रोसेसेस कैरिड आउट एट एन एग्रीकल्चर फार्म इंक्लूडिंग विच इज कैरिड आउट एट द एग्रीकल्चर फार्म. एग्रीकल्चर फार्म में जो जो इंक्लूड किया होता है वो क्या होता है, कूलिंग और बल्क पैकेजिंग and such like operations which do not alter the essential character of the agricultural produce but make it only marketable for primary market. यहाँ पे समझने की जरूरत है कि एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस तो बन गया, वो एग्जेम्प्टेड हो गया, लेकिन उसके बाद जो प्रोसेस किए जाते हैं, जैसे बल्क पैकेजिंग वगैरह किए जाते हैं और उसको अपने प्लास्टिक कवर में डाल के बेच दिया है, तो वो तो रिटेल यूज हो गया, तो रिटेल यूज हो गया तो वो टैक्सेबल हो जाएगा. लेकिन इफ यू आर पैकेजिंग इट फॉर मेकिंग इट अवेलेबल फॉर द प्राइमरी मार्केट, मतलब प्राइमरी मार्केट मंडी हो गई. अब मंडी को भेजने के लिए क्या करेंगे, बोरी में डालेंगे. जब आप बोरी में डाल के भेजोगे तो यू आर नॉट ट्राइंग टू मार्केट इट, आप ओनली उसको डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन के लिए भेज रहे हो कि आपके प्रोड्यूस किसी में जाना चाहिए. तो वो प्राइमरी पैकेजिंग जो होता है, जो बेसिक पैकेजिंग होता है फॉर यूज इन द प्राइमरी मार्केट, दैट इज एग्जेम्प्टेड. ओके, नॉट द सेकेंडरी पैकिंग. सेकेंडरी पैकिंग में जो पैकिंग लेबलिंग सब लगाते हैं, बेसिक भी प्लास्टिक पॉलिथीन में डाल के बेचते हैं, दैट एक्टिविटी विल बी टैक्सेबल, बट the primary packaging will be exempted. Then renting or leasing of agro machinery or vacant land with or without a structure incidental to its use. Okay, renting or leasing of agro machinery मतलब मशीन, एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस करने के लिए जो मशीन होती है, खल होते हैं जो राइस को निकालने के लिए एक हल होता है. मैं आपको एक वीडियो भी बताऊंगा, उसमें आपको दिखेगी कि एग्रीकल्चर मशीन्स क्या होती है. जो एग्रो मशीन है उसको आपने रेंट कर दिया या जगह है वेकेंट लैंड विथ और विदाउट अ स्ट्रक्चरल इंसिडेंस टू इट यूज, मतलब वहां पे जैसे एक छोटी सी बिल्डिंग भी, छोटा सा घर हो गया, इट हो भी सकता है नहीं भी हो सकता है, अगर आपने उसको रेंट पे दे दिया, लीज पे भी दे दिया, तब भी वो एग्जेम्प्टेड रहेगा, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस का कॉस्ट नहीं बढ़ना चाहिए. सो रेंटिंग और लीजिंग ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर मशीनरी और वेकेंट लैंड इज ऑल्सो एग्जेम्प्टेड. देन लोडिंग, अनलोडिंग, packing, storage or warehousing of agriculture produce, this is exempted. Agriculture extension services, वो भी हम समझेंगे क्या है. So agriculture extension services also exempted. Services by any agriculture produce marketing committee, मतलब मंडी होता है, मंडी will all regulated and they have a marketing committee. सभी स्टेट में ये हो गया है कि एक कमेटी रहती है, तो वो कमेटी जो भी चार्जेस कलेक्ट करती है, जहाँ पे लोग आते हैं, उनका भी जो चार्जेस होता है वो भी एग्जेम्प्टेड है. सो सर्विसेज बाय एनी एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस मार्केटिंग कमिटी, एपीएमसी कमिटी और बोर्ड आर सर्विसेज प्रोवाइडेड बाय दिस इज वन थिंग, एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस मार्केटिंग कमिटी और बोर्ड और मार्केटिंग कमिटी और बोर्ड, ये हो गया. देन सर्विसेज प्रोवाइडेड बाय अ कमीशन एजेंट फॉर सेल और परचेज ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस. ये मंडियों में क्या होता है, बहुत सारे एजेंट होते हैं जो बायर और सेलर को प्राइस बता के, प्राइस सेट करके लगाते हैं, प्रोडक्ट्स को बेचते हैं. तो वो लोग कमीशन जो लेते हैं उसको भी गवर्नमेंट ने एग्जेम्प्ट बना दिया है, ताकि ये ना हो कि वो जो एजेंट का चार्ज है उसके ऊपर जीएसटी लगे, नहीं, वो भी एग्जेम्प्टेड बता दिया है. ओके, देन सर्विसेज बाय वे ऑफ fumigation in a warehouse or agriculture produce, which you have already seen. So this, all of these are exempted services. ठीक है. Now we'll understand this thoroughly through the chart mode, because chart mode is the best mode to understand. First is overall look, देख लीजिए. Basic requirement is, it's a basic requirement. Agriculture, खाना is a basic requirement for anybody. So agriculture produce are exempted. Then we'll discuss on various aspects. First is we'll discuss on the registration. 23(1)(b) says agriculturist to the extent of his produce for cultivation is exempted. Okay, agriculturist के लिए क्या exempted है? On the agriculturist, no registration is required to the extent of produce out of the cultivation. ठीक है, to the extent of produce of cultivation, इसके लिए exempted मिल जाएगा. ओके, तो एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट को रजिस्ट्रेशन जरूरी है? नो, जरूरी नहीं है, अगर वो सिर्फ कल्टीवेशन करके बेचता है. लेकिन वो कल्टीवेशन के अलावा सपोज अपनी जगह कमर्शियल स्पेस के लिए रेंट कर देता है, देन इट बिकम्स अ टैक्सेबल, तब उसको रजिस्ट्रेशन लेने की जरूरत है. लेकिन सिर्फ एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस बेचता है और सभी उसके सर्विसेज एग्जेम्प्टेड है, तो एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट को रजिस्ट्रेशन लेने की जरूरत नहीं है. ठीक है. देन व्हाट आर ऑल द सर्विसेज विच आर एग्जेम्प्टेड, एक एक पढ़ेंगे. रेंटिंग ऑफ वेकेंट लैंड, इट कुड बी विथ और विदाउट स्ट्रक्चर. Then renting of agro machinery, right? हमने जो पढ़ा वो सेक्शन पढ़ा था, अभी सेक्शन को समझने के लिए अलग अलग ब्रेकअप देके पढ़ेंगे. सर्विसेज ऑफ रेंटिंग ऑफ वेकेंट लैंड एंड रेंटिंग ऑफ एग्रीकल्चरल मशीन. ओके, वेकेंट लैंड हो गया विदाउट स्ट्रक्चर, या एग्रो मशीन रेंट कर दिए तो भी एग्जेम्प्टेड है. Okay, with or without structure incidental to its use. Renting of vacant land with or without structure incidental to its use, or renting of agro machinery. ठीक है, ये तीन हो गए. अभी services relating to cultivation of plants or rearing of life form of animals. Sorry. Okay. Services relating to cultivation of plants or rearing of life form of animals, except horse for food, fiber, fuel and raw materials. तो इसमें क्या क्या कवर्ड है? आपने देखा कि सर्विसेज रिलेटिंग टू कल्टीवेशन ऑफ प्लांट्स एंड रेयरिंग ऑफ लाइफ फॉर्म ऑफ एनिमल्स फॉर फूड, फाइबर एंड फ्यूल एंड रॉ मटेरियल्स है. नाउ व्हाट डज ऑल इट कवर्स? इट आल्सो इंक्लूड्स पेसिकल्चर, which means breeding of fish हो गया. Then sericulture, which means rearing of silkworms. Then floriculture, which means cultivation of ornamental flowers. तो जब हम cultivation of plants बोलते हैं या whatever agricultural activities we say is covered, तो उसमें ये भी covered है, which means breeding of fish is also covered. Sericulture means rearing of silkworms is also covered. Floriculture, cultivation of ornamental flowers, all of this is also considered as agriculture activities. ठीक है. Then what all agriculture operations are exempted? Cultivation, harvesting, threshing, plant protection and testing. ठीक है. मतलब cultivation तो हम समझते हैं, बेसिक उपजाना झाड़ पौधों को, that is exempted. Harvesting मतलब उनको अच्छी तरह से उगाना, कल्टीवेट करो फिर उसको हार्वेस्ट करो. हार्वेस्टिंग के टाइम क्या होता है? उन सब पौधों को काटते हैं, करेक्ट, दैट इज हार्वेस्टिंग. देन थ्रेशिंग मतलब उनको अलग अलग करके उनको ऐसे करते हैं कि रॉ, जैसे गेहूं होता है, गेहूं के जो ऊपर का हल है उसको निकालते हैं, दैट इज कॉल्ड थ्रेशिंग एक्टिविटी. देन प्लांट प्रोटेक्शन, जब प्लांट प्रोटेक्शन के लिए पेस्टिसाइड्स वगैरह डालते हैं, ओके, या कुछ जर्म्स नहीं आने के लिए कुछ कीटाणु छेड़ते हैं, that is also a method, one of the methods of plant protection, that is also exempted. Testing, whether that seeds जो produce हुआ है वो is it good or no, is it of good quality or no. So testing services, so testing agencies होते हैं, generally government agency होते हैं, लेकिन थोड़े बहुत private agencies भी होते हैं. So that activities provided by testing agencies is also exempted. Then supply of farm labor हमने बताया था. Supply of farm labor की जो एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट है उसको फार्म लेबर की कमी पड़ गई है, तो वो एक ऐसे आदमी के जाता है जो फार्म लेबर सप्लाई करता है. दैट पर्सन प्रोवाइड्स फार्म लेबर सर्विसेज. तो दीज फार्म लेबर व्हाट दे डू द कल्टीवेशन ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ द फार्मर. सो दैट सर्विसेज इज आल्सो एग्जेम्प्टेड. ओके. देन प्रोसेस कैरिड आउट एट एग्रीकल्चर फार्म. सो हमने देखा है कटिंग, हार्वेस्टिंग, सॉर्टिंग, ग्रेडिंग. ठीक है, सॉर्ट करना, बड़े छोटे को अलग करना, ग्रेड करना उनको, कटिंग करना, वो भी सब एग्जेम्प्टेड है. प्रोसेस इज कैरिड आउट एट एग्रीकल्चर फार्म. सो ये सब कहाँ पे होता है? एग्रीकल्चर फार्म पे होता है. दैट इज आल्सो एग्जेम्प्टेड. व्हिच डज नॉट ऑल्टर द एसेंशियल कैरेक्टर्स बट मेक्स इट मार्केटेबल फॉर प्राइमरी मार्केट. करेक्ट. तो ये सब एक्टिविटीज किसके लिए होती है? जो प्राइमरी मार्केट के लिए होती है एक्टिविटीज, उसके लिए करते हैं तो एग्जेम्प्टेड है. लेकिन सेकेंडरी मार्केट के लिए करते हैं, जैसे काजू का हो गया, काजू के सीड बड़े हो गए, छोटे हो गए, उनको आप इसके लिए सेग्रीगेट करते हो ताकि आप अलग अलग प्राइस कर सको, राइट. दैट इज नॉट फॉर प्राइमरी मार्केट, दैट इज फॉर सेकेंडरी मार्केट. सो दैट विल बिकम टैक्सेबल. लेकिन वॉट एवर यू आर डूइंग दीज एक्टिविटीज ऑफ प्राइमरी मार्केट, दैट विल बी एग्जेम्प्टेड. देन वेयर हाउसिंग. वेयर हाउसिंग तो एग्जेम्प्टेड है ही है, बट वेयर हाउसिंग के अलावा वेयर हाउसिंग ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस एंड राइस एंड वेयर हाउसिंग ऑफ माइनर फॉरेस्ट प्रोड्यूस. मतलब माइनर फॉरेस्ट प्रोड्यूस क्या होता है? जैसे टैमरिंड होता है, वो आप उगा नहीं सकते हो, ग्रोज काइंड ऑफ फॉरेस्ट थिंग. सो दोज आर कॉल्ड एज माइनर फॉरेस्ट प्रोड्यूस. बैम्बू हो गया, टैमरिंड हो गया, दोज आर माइनर फॉरेस्ट प्रोड्यूस व्हिच इज एग्जेम्प्टेड. देन वेयरहाउसिंग, फ्यूमिगेशन इन वेयरहाउस ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस, हमने बताया था कि गैस छोड़ते हैं कि आपके जो भी स्टोर्ड आइटम्स है वो खराब ना हो जाए, उसके लिए भी जो फ्यूमिगेशन सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड होते हैं, दैट इज ऑल्सो एग्जेम्प्टेड. Some students, like specifically Kiran C and Mishra Anil Kumar ji, your questions are coming in the old version still. So kindly have a updated app. Please update your app, then post your questions, because otherwise these questions will not reach out to me. Do we have to write section numbers? No, we don't have to write section numbers. Advantage of religious is of what type? Advancement of religious, we have seen that जब वो पढ़ रहे थे religious का question, advancement of religious मतलब religious को बढ़ावा देने के लिए आप कुछ करते हो, जैसे आप activities run करते हो या कुछ programs run करते हो, कुछ workshops run करते हो, that is called as advancement of religion. Okay. फिर हमने देखा है यहाँ पे फ्यूमिगेशन भी एग्जेम्प्ट हो गया. देन एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस, we have seen what is the meaning of agriculture produce, and warehousing of agriculture and rice specifically exempted hai. Warehousing of cereals, pulses, fruits, nuts and vegetables, spices, copra, sugarcane, jaggery, indigo, unmanufactured tobacco, betel leaves, coffee and tea is also exempted. मेरी हैंडराइटिंग आपको अच्छी नहीं लगे तो आप फिर से दोबारा लिख देना, बिकॉज इट इज अल्टीमेटली फॉर यू. सो वंस यू राइट इट, यू हैव अ प्रैक्टिस ऑफ इट एंड इट विल बी fitted in your mind. So you take the slides and write it for your own self. Okay. Then market services. So हमने bifurcate कर दिया, क्या क्या सर्विस कर दिया. Additional services, right? Agriculture related services बोल रहे हैं. Warehousing में exemption हो गया. फिर market services, APMC yard. Okay. We have seen that agriculture produce marketing committee के जो services है, that is becoming exempted. फिर commission agent क्या करता है, वो सेलर और परचेजर को एक रेट फिक्स करते हैं, वो कमीशन लेता है कि मैं आपको एक बायर बताऊंगा ये प्राइस है, ठीक है, बट उन दोनों के बीच में ये कमीशन लेता है. वो कमीशन इज ऑल्सो ट्रीटेड एज वैलिड, बिकॉज सेलर को, फार्मर को जनरली परचेजर नहीं मिलता है, उसको रेट का नेगोशिएट करने की इतनी कैपेसिटी नहीं होती है, तो कमीशन एजेंट हेल्प करता है, तो उसके लिए कमीशन एजेंट का चार्जेस भी एग्जेम्प्टेड बता दिए, ठीक है. फिर क्या होता है, लोडिंग, अनलोडिंग, पैकिंग, स्टोरिंग ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस और राइस. अगेन यहाँ पे स्पेसिफिकली राइस इंक्लूड किया है, बिकॉज whether it's agriculture produce or no becomes, क्योंकि राइस जो होता है that is an end product, but paddy is an agriculture produce. पैडी को जब हम राइस में कन्वर्ट करते हैं तो that rice is a secondary thing, it's used for secondary market, because primary market में क्या जाता है, मंडियों में क्या जाता है, पैडी जाता है, राइस नहीं जाता है. तो इसीलिए these activities राइस को भी इंक्लूड कर दिया गया ताकि राइस टैक्सेबल नहीं हो. Okay, that's the relevance of including rice in all of these definitions. Like warehousing में specifically include किया है, loading, unloading, packaging में भी specifically include किया है, because ये actual में agriculture produce में नहीं होता है. Paddy is the agriculture produce, तो इसका confusion clear करने के लिए उन्होंने rice को भी include कर दिया. So loading, unloading, packaging, storage of agriculture produce and rice is also included under the exemption. Okay, then transportation of agriculture produce, transport of agriculture produce by road, rail and vessel. तो आपने लोडिंग अनलोड कर दिया, उसको ट्रांसपोर्ट कर रहे हो, वो ट्रांसपोर्ट सर्विस भी एग्जेम्प्टेड हो जाएगा. ट्रांसपोर्टेशन ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस बाय रोड और रेल और वेसल, मतलब आप फॉरेन शिपिंग करते हो, फॉरेन एक्सपोर्ट करते हो, then transportation of agriculture produce by these units are also exempted. Only if it is agriculture produce हो तो. Correct. What else is excluded? Agriculture extensive services, जैसे training, okay, training, then any मेलाज रखते हैं, किसान क्लब्स करते हो, तो ट्रेनिंग सर्विसेज फॉर एग्रीकल्चर सर्विसेज के लिए करते हो, तभी एग्जेम्प्टेड हो जाता है. देन एप्लीकेशन ऑफ साइंटिफिक नॉलेज टू एग्रीकल्चर प्रैक्टिसेस. आप साइंटिफिक नॉलेज को एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस के लिए यूज करते हो, जैसे वेयर देयर इज soil is good, where there is sufficient water. All of this scientific knowledge you apply to help the farmers to grow in a better manner. Then those activities are treated as agriculture extension services and those are also exempted. Then artificial insemination are all other livestock or other than horses. जैसे आपको growth करना है animals को, then you do artificial insemination or the insemination between one grade of animal to another grade of animal. Okay, all those activities is also exempted. So the artificial insemination and agricultural extension services, these are exempted. What is taxable then? Process which are alter the essential character of agriculture produce are taxable. तो ये समझने से हम लोग exemption की बात करें, अगर taxable दे देंगे तो हम divide, how will we distinguish? तो taxable वो services होते हैं जो essential, which alters the essential character, जो मेन एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस नहीं होके दूसरे प्रोडक्ट्स में कन्वर्ट हो जाते हैं. जैसे पोटैटो चिप्स, पोटैटो है वो एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस है. पोटैटो से पोटैटो चिप्स बन गया, उसको तल दिए, तो इट्स नॉट अ पोटैटो एनीमोर, इट्स अ पोटैटो चिप्स. तो दैट एक्टिविटी, दैट सर्विस is a taxable service. Then tomato ketchup, सिर्फ टोमेटो होता है, then it's agriculture produce. टोमेटो से आपने टोमेटो केचप बना दिया है, which you can store for a longer period of time. So that's not a exempted service. The process further, the process which makes agriculture produce marketable in retail market. So मैंने primary market, secondary market कहा था ना, तो जो भी activity primary market के लिए तक करते हैं, that is exempted. जो activity secondary market के लिए करते हैं, जैसे drying of pineapple, pineapple तक है, pineapple को काट के आपने उसमें drying सुखा दिया है, okay, so that it can be used for a longer period of time. So it is not a primary product, it is not a agriculture produce, it's a secondary market के लिए हो गया. या टिनिंग, जैसे पाइनएप्पल को कट करके आप उसको शुगर सिरप डाल के टिन्स में डालते हो, that is also a taxable activity, that's also a taxable product that will not be falling under agriculture produce. Okay, so this is with respect to agricultural thing. Is there any questions on this? Ripening, labeling of fruits or vegetables is exempted? No. Ripening, labeling of fruits, all of this is taxable because वो specifically यहाँ पे covered नहीं है. So those all will be taxable. Great, Somesh. Using of horse cart for sending the product to market from warehouse for sale is also charged. Using of horse cart. तो अब आप क्या कर रहे हो? Horse use नहीं कर रहे हो, horse cart use कर रहे हो for sending the product to market from the warehouse. हाँ, market अब primary market के लिए हो गया. So generally horse cart या animals या रिक्शा से जो होता है, that is anyways exempted. जो हम जीटीएस सर्विस पढ़ेंगे तब देखेंगे कि ऑटो रिक्शाज एग्जेम्प्टेड है और बुल्लक कार्ट या एनी एनिमल का कार्ट होता है इंक्लूडिंग हॉर्स कार्ट, दैट इज आल्सो एग्जेम्प्टेड. नॉट ओनली फॉर दिस थिंग, अगर आप गांव में भी शहर में भी कुछ भी करते हो, सो दैट हैंड पुल से करते हो या एनिमल से बुल्लक कार्ट वगैरह करते हो, दैट इज एग्जेम्प्टेड, क्योंकि वो जनरली स्पीड भी कम होती है, वो लोग फिर ज्यादा कमर्शियल के लिए यूज नहीं करते. सो दैट हॉर्स कार्ट सर्विसेज आर आल्सो एग्जेम्प्टेड. The question was using of horse cart for sending the product to market from warehouse for sale. Is it taxable or not taxable? Yes, using of horse cart is exempted. It is not taxable. Okay, so next service में चले. Agriculture हमने ठीक से समझ लिया है. इसमें questions क्या हो सकते हैं? Green tea, हाँ ये important है. Green tea is tree for consumption and processing of coffee beans. Correct. तो अभी tea का problem, there is a lot of clarification and lot of confusion which are there, which has been clarified through circulars. ये circulars के highlights में बता रहा हूँ आपको. Green tea or tea for consumption and processing of coffee beans, is this agriculture produce? No. टी कैसे बनता है? टी लीव्स को लेके उसको सुखाते हैं, और at least if not सुखाते, there is a machinery activity of heating it up. वो टी लीव्स जो होता है वो बिखर के then it gets converted into a black tea powder. So that is the tea which is an agriculture produce. टी लीव्स से जो टी बनता है, that basic thing is agriculture produce. But ग्रीन टी जो हम मिलती है या टी फॉर हम जो कंज्यूम करते हैं, दैट इज नॉट एन एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस. द एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस इज ओनली दैट टी, चाय की पत्ती, चाय के पत्ते, नॉट इवन पत्ती, पत्ती तो ये हो जाती है टी फॉर कंजम्पशन. जो बेसिक लीव्स है that is agriculture produce. That activity of converting leaves to tea is not a exempted activity, it's a taxable activity. Then processing of coffee beans. The coffee beans hai, that is an agriculture produce. The activity of processing of coffee beans ये secondary market के लिए, primary market के लिए नहीं है. Even tea for consumption जो हम tea चाय रोज पीते हैं, that is a secondary market के लिए, that is a taxable activity. Then processing of sugarcane into jaggery changes its essential characteristics. जब शुगर केन को हो गया, फिर शुगर केन से शुगर बना दिया, तब ठीक है. शुगर केन को जैगरी बना देते हैं. Like even sugar is taxable at 5%, it's not exempted. So sugar cane is a exempted produce. Sugar cane to changing, make sugar banana or jaggery banana, that activity is also a taxable activity. So when we said, ये किस लिए important है? When we said this services relative of process carried on, okay, cooling or bulk packaging, which makes the operation not essential for its market, for the primary market, उसके लिए है, because what all is exempted only is exempted, not everything कि agriculture हमको लगता है तो exempted हो जाएगा, नहीं. So tea for consumption or processing of coffee beans है, that is not an agriculture produce. So any activities done to convert the coffee beans to make it as a coffee, then चिकोरी जो निकलता है उसको exempted नहीं मिलेगा, वो taxable हो जाएगा. Similarly, processing of sugar cane into jaggery changes its essential character, so it is not exempted, it is taxable. Pulses, which is commonly known as dal, are obtained after de-husking and splitting or both. मतलब जो दाल निकलती है, pulses जो निकलती है, वो क्या होती है? वो husk को निकाल के करते हैं. The process of de-husking or splitting is usually not carried out by the farmers at the farm level. Farm level activities, you've seen that it is exempted, but off-farm activities वो किधर होती है? Machinery होती है, mill में होती है. Therefore, pulses which is dehusked or spilled are also not agricultural produce. So basically, ये समझना चाहिए हमको, जो agricultural farm में activities होती हैं, that is exempted. जो mills में जाती हैं, वो taxable हो जाती है. However, whole pulse grains such as whole gram, rajma are covered under the definition. मतलब whole pulse हो गया, ठीक है, तब तक those are all agriculture produce. लेकिन जब उसको काट के, उसको काटने में उसको स्प्लिट कर देते हैं, काटते नहीं है मतलब उसको अलग करते हैं, ठीक है, बड़ी दाल को, छिलके वाली दाल को निकालते हैं, फिर छोटी छोटी दाल बनाते हैं उसको. So that is a use for secondary market. So those are all taxable activities. Like milling of paddy into rice कैसे होता है, इसके लिए मैं आपको एक वीडियो बताता हूँ. क्योंकि पैडी जो है एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस है, नॉन पैडी जो है वो एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस नहीं है, इसलिए ये वीडियो देखना जरूरी है कि हमको फर्क पता चले कि पैडी और हस्क में क्या फर्क है. ऑडियो नहीं आ रहा है, वीडियो आ रहा है. okay.
Let's discuss rice mill first.
Share audio.
Rice milling process from pre.
Okay.
In this video, we're discussing about rice milling. So, what is rice milling process? It's all about producing added milled rice after separating the husk, the granular, and the clean rice and starchy underside. Let's discuss rice mill function and steps in rice milling process from pre-cleaning to the packaging. First step is rice pre-cleaning process. Paddy always comes up having a lot of external material, including weed, soil, seed, etc. And these external things need to be removed before taking into the hulling process, so that the efficiency of the hulls as well as the milling would not get affected. Second step is rice cleaning process. Brown rice is actually produced by removing the husk from rough paddy rice. Paddy is fed into the gap between two rubble boulders that are rotating at different speeds and in opposite directions. Compression provides the necessary normal force cause between the paddy and the surface of the rubble roller. After passing through shelling rollers, the resulting mixture of brown rice and the husk that is being removed is introduced to the aspirator so that they get separated. Next step is paddy separation. Sometimes there is paddy, brown rice, and we have to remove this paddy. This is done by paddy separators. Paddy separators are fundamentally density separators. Separation is achieved by fluidization, causes denser brown rice grain to sink to the bottom of bed of rice, whereas lighter paddy grain rise to the top. Next step is bran removal or the polishing. Bran removal is the process by which bran and bran layers are selectively removed from the rice kernel, leaving the endosperm largely intact and with a desired surface appearance. The objective is to completely remove the bran layer most cost-effective manner without damage to the endosperm. Several mechanisms can be employed in mechanical action. These include tearing by friction, cutting, grinding, and cutting. Modern rice milling systems can be classified into two categories of milling equipment: friction type machine, grinding type machine. Friction type machine use primarily friction and injection. These machines use relatively high pressure with low peripheral speed. Grains are rubbed vigorously against each other and against the metallic surface of milling chamber. Thus, friction is the major force of milling, so it is termed as a friction type rice mill. Grinding type machines are mainly grinding and impact action. They use low pressure with high peripheral speed. Ice grains are removed by grinding action and the impact force as grains come in contact with aggressive rope. Now, next is the separation of broken rice from the whole grains. This is mainly done by indented center graders. Broken grains are lifted by the indent and by scalpers rotary motion. At some point, depending on size and weight, they will fall from the indent and be collected in a industrial tub, which is charged at the front of the machine. So this is all about rice milling process. Who like it?
Okay. So we understood basically that this activity, what they said was, what is rice milling? This rice milling is basically done at a mill. Okay. So all this rice milling activity is done at a mill. So it is not done at the farm. That's why it is all taxable. And so there is a difference between rice and milk. So that's why rice also they've said is exempted. That's why warehousing of rice also is exempted. So paddy and rice, there are two different things. It is not the same. Okay. 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 What could be the other questions to understand is what are the agriculture produce and what is non-agriculture produce? Like how we said paddy and rice, that is definitely there as one of the items. But generally, what is non-agriculture produce and agriculture produce. Fruits are agriculture produce, but when they are dried or processed, like tinning, heating it up, drying it up, they are not agriculture produce. Then pineapple, like example of definitely the pineapple, tinned pineapple or dried pineapple is not an agriculture produce. Tea leaves basically are agriculture produce. Tea and tea powder is not an agriculture produce. Similarly, coffee beans, the main Arabica and Robusta coffee beans are agriculture produce, but when they are processed to make coffee powder, they are not agriculture produce. Sugar cane is an agriculture produce. Then sugar and jaggery are non-agriculture produce. Whole pulses, right? The whole pulses thing, agriculture produce, but when they are dehusked or split and made into dals, then that is not an agriculture produce. Okay, and paddy, of course, is an agriculture produce, but rice is not an agriculture produce. So that's the distinction between agriculture produce and non-agriculture produce. Okay, so we will take up one more service today, and then we will discuss other service in next class. The last service what we'll discuss today is, I'll at least touch upon that so that we can cover it up within the time and we can take up afresh in the next class. We'll just touch upon the next services on educational services. But before that, there are some questions being asked on previous services also on charitable trust. So all services provided to charitable trust are taxable? Yes. All services provided to charitable trust are taxable. It is not exempted. Any more questions on charitable trust or agriculture services? Rice, so rice is an agriculture produce? No, rice is not an agriculture produce, but they have, since it is not an agriculture produce, that's the reason that included in the various definition to include their warehousing also as exempted, and those activities relating to what we have seen. Agriculture service, we have seen rice being included at two places, right? I'll just take you this slide again. Loading and unloading of rice, right? And warehousing of rice, even though it is not an agriculture produce. Paddy is an agriculture produce, but in these two places they have included, that is warehousing of agriculture produce and loading, packaging, storaging of that also is exempted. Okay, so you should remember rice is exempted at these two places. Other places it will be taxable. Okay, so let's understand how the educational services works. The educational services which are exempt and which is received by educational and which is provided by educational institution. Okay, so here generally we have seen what is provided to charitable organization, what is provided to agriculture produce, those are all taxable, right? So in agriculture produce, I've seen that a lot of other services were exempted. Similarly, in education services also, services provided to education services, some are exempted, but however, services provided by education institution is mostly exempted, but they're giving you additional thing that services provided to education institution will be exempted, which is basically services received by education institution. But पहले ये पढ़ लेते हैं, services provided by education institution, जो education institution provide करती है, क्या-क्या exempted है? Services provided by educational institution to its students, faculty and staff. What is the educational institution? वो भी पढ़ेंगे, but services पहले समझ लेते हैं जो exempted है. Services provided by educational institution to its student, faculty and staff. Staff को क्या देते हैं? Salary देते हैं. Then staff को अगले consultancy, special lecturers है, special services provide करते हैं. Okay, then services provided to them, everything basically जो भी services हम लोग educational institution से लेते हैं, that is exempted. Then conduct of entrance examination against entrance fees, that is also exempted. Okay, so services provided by educational institution में उनकी जो tuition fees होती है, that is exempted. तो फिर और exam fees, entrance fees जो collect करते हैं, वो भी exempted हो जाएगा. ठीक है. Then आप एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशन डेफिनेशन पढ़ेंगे तो सो इतनी वाइड है कि रिजल्ट्स अनाउंस करना, बाद में स्कॉलरशिप देना, वो सब भी इंक्लूडेड हो जाएंगे। ठीक है, सर्विसेज प्रोवाइडेड रिसीव्ड बाय एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूशन में क्या क्या एग्जेम्प्टेड हो जाएंगे? ट्रांसपोर्टेशन ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स, फैकल्टी एंड स्टाफ ऑफ द एलिजिबल एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूशंस। सो ट्रांसपोर्टेशन सर्विसेज जो है वो भी exempted है। Services provided by a transporter to a school is exempted, right? So transportation of students, faculty and staff of the eligible educational institution, मतलब जो educational institutions पढ़ाती है उनके लिए जो मैं provide करता हूँ transportation, students के transportation होने दो या faculty या staff के लिए, that is exempted. Then catering services including any midday meal scheme sponsored by the government. So जब students को खाने के लिए कुछ देते हैं, खाना, okay, दोपहर का खाना देते हैं, that is also exempted. या midday schemes जो government चलाती है, that is also exempted. Then security or cleaning or housekeeping services in such education institutions. जो उसके देखभाल के लिए जो एजेंसीज होती हैं, जो सिक्योरिटी सर्विस प्रोवाइड करती है, हाउसकीपिंग सर्विस प्रोवाइड करती है, वो एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशन को जब प्रोवाइड करते हैं तो वो जीएसटी चार्ज नहीं करेंगे। क्या क्या सर्विसेज हो गई है? सिक्योरिटी सर्विस हो गई है, क्लीनिंग हो गई है और हाउसकीपिंग सर्विसेज होती है। तो ये तीन सर्विसेज जब सर्विस प्राइवेट सप्लायर्स प्रोवाइड करेंगे तब भी वो जीएसटी चार्ज नहीं करेंगे। ठीक है, सो ये किस किस के लिए एप्लीकेबल है? इसमें भी तीन बाइफिकेशन किया है। वन इज प्री स्कूल और हायर सेकेंडरी स्कूल, देन एक होता है जो बियॉन्ड हायर सेकेंडरी स्कूल के लिए, और ये जो सर्विस है इस सबके लिए एग्जेम्प्टेड रहेगी। ठीक है, तो सर्विसेज अब तक तीन जो एग्जेम्प्टेड सर्विसेज थी वो सिर्फ प्री स्कूल और हायर सेकेंडरी स्कूल के लिए थी। सर्विसेज रिलेटिंग टू एडमिशन टू सच इंस्टीट्यूशन और कंडक्ट ऑफ एग्जामिनेशन। सपोज मैं एडमिशन में नहीं कंडक्ट करना चाहता, मैं नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ, लेकिन मैं किसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को, कंपनी को आउटसोर्स करता हूं कि आप मेरे को एडमिशन की एक्टिविटीज लेके जो भी एडमिशन का आपको एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव चार्जेस है वो मेरे से ले लीजिए। तो वो जो एजेंसी है, वो जो कंपनी एडमिशन सर्विस प्रोवाइड करती है, ओके, सर्विसेज रिलेटिंग टू एडमिशन टू सच इंस्टीट्यूशन और ट्रस्ट, वो जो मुझे सर्विस चार्ज करेंगे उसके ऊपर भी जीएसटी नहीं है। दिस इज टू ऑल एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूशन। ठीक है, then supply of online educational journals or periodicals, तो ऑनलाइन जर्नल्स और पीरियडिकल सप्लाई करेंगे उनके ऊपर भी एग्जेम्प्टेड नहीं है, बट ये किसके लिए? ओनली बियॉन्ड हायर सेकेंडरी स्कूल के लिए, प्री स्कूल और हायर सेकेंडरी स्कूल के लिए टैक्सेबल रहेगा। सो सप्लाई ऑफ ऑनलाइन एजुकेशनल जर्नल्स और पीरियडिकल्स, जब ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन जर्नल्स और पीरियडिकल्स में सप्लाई करता हूँ तब मैं, अगर मैं स्कूल को सप्लाई करता हूँ तो जीएसटी चार्ज करूंगा, लेकिन मैं कॉलेजेस वगैरह को जो सप्लाई करता हूँ तब एग्जेम्प्टेड रह जाएगा। ठीक है, so rice agriculture produce, no. Okay, slaughtering of animals is exempted. Slaughtering of animals I think is exempted, yes, because it is kind of agriculture produce, वो अलग से आएगा, but it's not a service, it's a goods, so इसलिए I'm not concentrating on that. Animals sold is exempted, so it will be covered under that. Yeah, so there's an exemption for produce of animals, animal produce or animals itself, so that will be exempted. Ankur Patel, what is your question? I have many queries that I sent you, but I think it is not reaching you. Yes, Ankur, I have not received your questions at all. Our registration fees in intermediate is also exempted. Educational registration fees is not exempted. Yeah, it is exempted, correct, because what we pay, we are covered under the category of provided by educational institution. We are providing education, C institute is providing education and giving you a degree which is recognized by law. So it is a exempt services itself. Tobacco leaves farming are exempted. Yes, tobacco leaves farming are exempted. So now I'm getting questions. I don't know if these questions are missed out or it has been sent now. So tobacco leaves farming part are exempted. Yes. Okay, educational institution, we understood this. Now we'll understand what is the definition of educational institution. We have told कि educational institution providing or educational institution receiving, लेकिन educational institution क्या है? Educational institution means an institution providing services by way of preschool education and education up to higher secondary school, education as a part of curriculum for obtaining a qualification recognized by any law for the time being in force, and education as a part of an approved vocational education course. Okay, all of this is मीन्स प्री स्कूल हो गया, जब हम स्कूल जाते हैं 10th तक, एजुकेशन अप टू हायर सेकेंडरी स्कूल, तब तक एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूशन हो गया. फिर एजुकेशन एज अ पार्ट ऑफ अ करिकुलम फॉर ऑब्टेनिंग अ क्वालिफिकेशन रिकॉग्नाइज्ड बाय लॉ. सीए is a qualification which we got by recognized by law. Yeah, degree is also a thing, right? Any education, it could be graduation, post graduation, for which you get a qualification which is recognized by law. That is also an educational institution. Then education as a part of an approved vacation educational course. That if the institution, if that organization is providing education as a part of an approved vocational education course, matlab approved vocational education course is also defined, which means a course which is run by an industrial training institution or an industrial training center affiliated to the National Council for Vocational Training or State Council for Vocational Training, offering courses in designated trades notified under the Apprentices Act. ठीक है, तो इंडस्ट्रियल ट्रेनिंग प्रोवाइड की जाती है. तो ऑल ऑफ दोज इंडस्ट्रियल ट्रेनिंग जो है वेरियस काउंसिल के द्वारा अफिलिएटेड होते हैं, जैसे इंडस्ट्रियल ट्रेनिंग इंस्टीट्यूशंस होते हैं, वो सभी क्या होते हैं, इफ दे आर डेजिग्नेट एज प्रोवाइडिंग ट्रेड्स व्हिच इज देयर अंडर द अप्रेंटिसशिप एक्ट, तो फिर एग्जेम्प्टेड हो जाएंगे. ठीक है, अगर वो अप्रेंटिसशिप एक्ट में नहीं है, जैसे मैं कुछ सर्विसेज कंप्यूटर रिलेटेड सर्विस प्रोवाइड करता हूँ एज अ वोकेशनल ट्रेनिंग, अगर मैं बेसिक कंप्यूटर हार्डवेयर का सर्विस प्रोवाइड करता हूँ, कैसे रिपेयर करते हैं, सो दैट इज इंक्लूडेड देयर, दैट विल बी एग्जेम्प्टेड. लेकिन मैं सॉफ्टवेयर या नए एप्स बनाना सिखाता हूँ, वो उसमें नहीं है, दैट विल बिकम टैक्सेबल. ठीक है. देन a modular employable skill course approved by the NCVT, run by a person registered with the Director General of Training, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. So स्किल डेवलपमेंट और एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप को बढ़ावा देने के लिए क्या करते हैं, मॉड्यूलर एम्प्लॉयबल स्किल कोर्स होते हैं, जैसे टेलरिंग कोर्स हो गया या अकाउंटिंग कोर्स हो गया, टैली सीखने का कोर्स हो गया. नाउ दैट वाज ऑल रिकॉग्नाइज्ड. ओके, अगर वो अप्रूव्ड है एंड व्हिच इज रन बाय अ पर्सन रजिस्टर्ड, द पर्सन को वहां से डीजीपी और मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ स्किल और डेवलपमेंट के साथ अप्रूवल लेना पड़ेगा, वहां से उनको रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना पड़ेगा. अगर वो जब रजिस्ट्रेशन लेते हैं तब इट बिकम्स एन अप्रूव्ड वोकेशनल कोर्स. ओके, प्राइवेट ITI जो करते हैं ओनली इन रेस्पेक्ट ऑफ डेजिग्नेटेड ट्रेड्स नोटिफाइड, वो मैं स्पेसिफिक बता रहा हूँ, बट जनरली वोकेशनल कोर्सेज में भी आपको एग्जेम्पशन मिलेंगे. So ICI providing coaching is also exempted. ICI providing coaching will be taxable because it is not it will be exempted. ICI अगर जब provide करता है, because it is providing educational institution में और ये ट्यूशंस प्रोवाइड करते हैं, so that will be exempted, it will not be taxable. लेकिन प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशन जो प्रोवाइड करते हैं वो एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशन नहीं है, they are not providing any of these things. वो they are not providing education as a part of curriculum for obtaining qualification. प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशन में आपको क्वालिफिकेशन नहीं मिलते, so that will be taxable. In preschool education means only 10th class or from primary to 10th. Primary to 10th. Preschool education before school. They're saying two things: preschool education and education up to higher secondary school. मतलब before KG, the LKG, UKG, kindergarten जो भी है, that is preschool, and education up to higher secondary school. मतलब up to 10th जो है, वो both are covered. So preschool and post school, preschool and education up to higher secondary school, दोनों covered है. नर्सरी बच्चों के लिए जो क्लासेस होते हैं, that is also exempted, और schools up to 10th is also exempted. Okay, I think we have completed the relevant topics which are important today. In next session on Wednesday, we'll further continue with exemptions, and we'll see in third class on exemptions. We have 3 classes for exemptions. So one we have covered today, 2 more we have. Next class we'll cover the major exemptions, and whatever time we have for the third exemption class, that we will take up some problems and try to solve it. Okay. Any doubts till now? Good night, Somesh Karath. If you're understood my topic, that's very good. Good to hear that all my things were clear to you. Okay, thank you very much. We'll meet again on Wednesday. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.